You're all set, Your Honor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Newington Town Council regular meeting of Tuesday, July 13th at 7 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America
and to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right, if we could please do roll call, Susan.
Okay, Counselor Anist. Here. Counselor Braverman.
Here.
Counselor Budraco.
Here.
Counselor Camillo.
Here.
Counselor Donahue.
Here.
Counselor Mankey.
Here.
Counselor Minor.
Here.
Counselor Nagel.
Here.
Mayor Del Buono.
Here.
All in attendance.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Mankey. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Annis. Any discussion on the agenda?
Yep.
Go ahead, Counselor Annis.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I would like to add to approval of agenda, add item 8A, appointment to Central Connecticut Health District, CCHD, David Wemmett.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Donahue. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I'll mention this just because it's another new meeting, but just so everybody understands, as of July 1st, James, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the new executive orders indicate that a vote can be taken as a whole, like we just did, and only roll call is necessary if there is, if it's not unanimous. So I will be moving forward unless I believe there may be a vote that's not unanimous. I'll certainly do roll call to start. If it ends up not being unanimous, then I'll call for roll call just for the record, just to make sure everybody understands the procedure. It's a little bit different than what we've had in the past. Okay, next item on the agenda is public participation. Let me just click on over to that window.
Just me.
There's no public.
There are no members of the public in attendance right now. That doesn't mean they're not watching in other ways. So we will go ahead, and the next item, nobody got any email correspondence from public, correct?
No.
Okay.
I did get I got an email from I left it on my desk at home. Somebody who was very concerned that if the pool goes forward, that we make sure that the traffic does not impede the neighborhood and they all leave on the Willard Ave side of the street.
Okay.
I'll scan it and forward it to you. I don't.
Perfect. Did they ask that it be read into the record or attached?
No, it was more of an informational record, an informational note. But I think you were on copy, Beth. I'm not 100% sure.
I don't remember seeing it unless it came today, but if you want to forward it out to the council,
I'll scan it and forward it to everybody.
Thanks. Thank you. All right, next is remarks by councilors on public participation. Anyone? All right, we'll move on along to consideration of old business. And the first item on our agenda this evening under old is health update COVID-19. Mr. Chapman.
Yes, good evening, folks. I just wanted to, I want to read something to you that I just picked up on my town phone, which is a report from CNN. I'll read it verbatim. Just as health experts predicted, the combination of unvaccinated people and the more contagious Delta strain of coronavirus has led to new COVID-19 surges. In 45 states, the rates of new cases in the past week are at least 10% higher than the rates were in new cases the previous week. In 34 states, new cases passed this week are at least 50% higher than new cases in previous weeks. Connecticut is one of those 34 states that have over 50% increase in 1 week of COVID-19 because of the Delta and because people are still not vaccinated. So I just bring this up because there's really nothing locally to report new on COVID-19. But I think we're seeing a trend now that people are coming back from vacations and 4th of July. The trend is now going up. So we need to be very cautious of how we proceed to make sure that we don't end up being part of the problem and maintain, as we always have, being part of the solution. So that's my report on COVID-19 today.
Okay, thank you. Any council comment or question? Counselor Menke.
Keith, maybe Charlie Brown told us, but do we have an idea how many of our citizens have been vaccinated and how many have not?
I have not heard anything from Charlie on that, but I certainly can ask him.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the number is. Are we better than other towns? Is there something we could do to increase that vaccination rate, or are we just part of the trend of happy? Last I think I heard about 60% of people have been vaccinated and about 40% hadn't been.
Let me see what I can find out, and also we'll do a comparison of our surrounding towns with the health district and see how.
It'd be nice to know if we could find out. Thank you.
Sure.
I do know last night when we had talked to the mayor, Megan Menke was on, and the question of vaccinations was brought up. And I know Dr. Brummett had mentioned that our stats in the area of the younger kids, so like 12 to 16, I think it was, the percent was a little bit lower, still maybe around 50% is what she had indicated, but Megan did not have any updated figures yet. She said she would try to get those, so we could certainly ask her to follow up with Charlie Brown and at CCHD for that.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Counselor Minor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe the state, as of last week, stopped reporting daily numbers. We've been holding, I believe it's 0.08 was the last reporting, and they were going to be doing weekly updates to update the hospitalizations as deaths. So just that's the information as of the 1st of July.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comment? All right, seeing none, we'll continue on. The next item is beautification program update. Mr. Chapman, are you going to do that, or we have a memo, correct?
I believe you have a memo from the chairperson. Can you bring that up, James?
All right, so I did speak with Miss Avey, who is the chair of the committee, and she did send in the memo here. They have ordered 175 Fall in Love with Newington flags. I did see the design. It's very, really a beautiful design. I think it'll add a lovely look to the places where they put it. It's a fall design with leaves and different colors. They will be putting them up first on Main Street and then throughout the town in different locations. They have ordered 12 17-inch planters, 2 of which will be placed at Garfield and Willard Avenue. And the other 10 are going to be offered to local businesses through a raffle, which was announced in a press release through Parks and Recreation Department last week. And they have already received names of businesses who want to partake. These are really huge planters. We're not talking about just little, residential planters. These are huge commercial sized planters. My understanding is that they hold, I believe, 17 gallons of water in the bottom reservoir, so that they don't require a lot of maintenance in terms of watering or, keeping an eye on that. It would hold the water in the reservoir. So that's because we were concerned in terms of we want to beautify and not create a whole lot more work. So that's what she had mentioned to me. You'll see on your screen there is a press release document also that describes that in more detail for our review. And if anybody has any questions, I can certainly bring them back to Ms. Avey. She's not on the call this evening. Counselor Menke?
Yeah, do we know who's planting the planters?
Mr. Chapman, the Parks Department is taking care of that, correct?
Well, I believe that they're purchasing them, and then as people request them, then I believe that they'll do the initial planting, and then I don't know how the businesses will either take care of it themselves once they're in place, or whether we'll have our seasonal.
I believe the intent is that the businesses will take care of it.
It looks, from the memo, we plant them the first year. The second year, the businesses take charge of it, right?
This is a true partnership between the town and our businesses.
And I just assume, just quickly, I assume these pots then disappear in the winter, so we don't plow them over.
Yeah, I believe they'll be picked up by the Parks Department and stored for the winter and
Okay.
back out next spring.
Cool.
All set, Counselor Menke?
Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor
Yes,
Pedrejko?
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've seen some of these pots popping up around town, and they do make a difference. And like you said, Mayor, the flag will be very attractive. But now that it's summer and I've got my bike out and I'm doing more walking, whatever, I know beautification, and again, and I've said this before, is, people think of new things, a new plant, a new this, a new that. But the amount of litter is just increasing and increasing. Hartford Road is disgusting along the side. And when I brought this up before, it's like, well, we don't have the resources, we don't have whatever. Well, I think some of that money, quite frankly, beautification is not just new things, it's maintaining what you have. And if it requires taking, some of the resources to clean up what we have, then I think that should be considered as part of this process. But again, Hartford Road was absolutely disgusting. The area around Newington Arena is disgusting. People, it's unfortunate, but people don't care. But I don't firmly, just like with town facility, you shouldn't keep adding on and on and on when you can't take care of what you have. And I am concerned about the amount of junk in town. And also, with the, there seems to be more, not just, the litter and whatever around the curbs, but there also now is a little bit more, I don't know if people during tag sale, they're just cleaning out their garages or whatever, but there's more stuff along the curbs. So I think we have to consider that as part of beautification. Thank you.
Very good point. Thank you. Counselor Minor?
Madam Mayor, yeah, I would tend to agree with Gail that, we should put a focus on, at least on the mainline roads, to somehow get a little time spent on collecting the litter that's roadside, and just to keep an eye on the bulky items that are showing up on curbs and to see if they stay there or don't. Again, with the change in the policy regarding bulky waste, I think it's just important to pay attention to see if that is going to really be fruitful. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I don't see any other hands up, so we'll continue on. Next item is new business, and the first item is appointment of the Anna Reynolds construction manager. I do see on the agenda that a waiver is requested on this. At its July 1st meeting, I'm just reading our memo out loud for y'all. The Anna Reynolds School Building Committee formally selected Newfield Construction of Hartford, Connecticut to perform the CM services for the renovation of Anna Reynolds Elementary School. The committee is requesting that we, the town council, consider a waiver this evening to ensure that the construction manager is in place to keep the project moving forward on time. Which I'm glad that was included in the memo, because I was wondering why the waiver was requested. At this point, I'll open it up.
Mayor, the chairman is also present from the Anna Reynolds Committee for any questions you may have.
Oh, great.
This is on.
I don't see him on my screen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm here,
Oh,
Beth.
okay.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Good evening. Yeah, if you want, I could give a little bit more detail on it. Again, we don't like to come in front of you and ask for a waiver, but we changed our owner's project manager through the project. So after the referendum passed, we had to put the OPM out to bid, and Colliers was not the one firm that we were working with. They were not the successful low bidder. So that put us a little bit behind going out for CM. So in order to stay on schedule, now that we have our OPM, which is CSG, Construction Services Group, on board, it took them a little while to catch up. We had to do the best we could to get the construction manager hired. We had 9 firms, narrowed it down to 4, interviewed 4. Newfield was the winner. And it was unanimous by the group to move forward with them. Again, pricing was very favorable to the town, as it has been on the other 2 bids that went out. And the architect is basically through with schematic design. So before they can go to the design development, we need the CM on board to make sure the estimating is correct between the architect and construction manager to move forward. So that's why we're asking for this waiver. Again, we try to do our best not to have you waive your rules, because I know that, you don't enjoy doing that, and I don't blame you. But in this case, it really does, it helps a lot keeping this project moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody
very
has
much
any
for-
questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Badreko.
Yeah, Steve, again, this is my ignorance since I'm not, involved in initial contracting of projects such as this, but I'm just curious. It says that the fee and the costs, whatever, will be, about 2 mil. Well, yeah, 2 million, 2.5 million, let's say, plus 52,400 per month for each extra month the project runs. My question is, are there like qualifiers put in there in case, like, let's say, like a not to exceed amount, not to exceed a certain number of months, or for the reasons why there would be an additional several months tacked on, unforeseen, circumstances, or if it's the contractor's fault or the whatever's fault, because yeah.
It's a great question, Councilor Badreko. The reason that we have the monthly price in there is actually we expect the project to come in a little bit under, not go over. So it's based on, right now, we ask the construction managers to base their pricing schedules on a 27-month construction period. We actually believe it's going to be shorter than that. It could be actually down to maybe as little as 19 months. So we're looking at that 52,400 as really a deduct, not an add. But I will share with you, if something happened that is unforeseen and the construction had to go on longer for whatever reason, I can't imagine why. But on the other end, if they were expected to stay over 27 months, they would need to be compensated for it. But I really believe this will be a deduct. I think you'll see us take several months off the construction, which will save not only with the construction manager fees, but also with the cost of the construction of the school.
Would there be something in there that says not to exceed 27 months, or is that kind of screw up the contractor?
No, I don't believe we would get anybody to do that.
Okay. Okay, no, thank you.
Yep.
Any other council question before we read the motion in? Councilor Mankey?
Yeah, Mr. Woods, could you just explain what a construction manager is again?
The construction manager basically will oversee the entire project and of the construction. So they're the ones that will solicit the bids for the town. They will engage with the individual contractors. We probably will have 13, 14 trades. So it's going to be not unlike what the town hall did, the same process that you followed there. So the construction manager follows the process, the entire construction process through, right up through the commissioning of the building. And the state holds back 10% of the money to us until the end of the project. And they will follow that through and make sure that everything is in place with the state of Connecticut so we can get our full reimbursement.
So they kind of represent us for the contractor?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And they will have a guaranteed maximum price not to exceed, as you did in the town hall project that you had.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Councilor Minor had his hand up, but I don't see it now. Are you all set, Chris?
Yeah, no, Steve carried it right at the end. I'm all set.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. All right. I don't see any other hands up. Would someone like to read in the motion to waive the rules? Councilor Nagel?
Just unmuting myself. Thank you, Mayor. Resolve the Newington Town Council, in accordance with number 11 of the Town Council Rules of Procedure adopted February 11th, 2020, hereby moves to allow action on agenda item 7A to authorize Keith Chapman, town manager, to enter into an agreement with Neufeld Construction of Hartford, Connecticut, to provide construction manager services for the Anna Reynolds School renovation project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Braverman. Any discussion on the waiving of the rules? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I'll just remind counselors to try and unmute when we're getting ready to take a vote. I can see your mouths, but we need to have you be audible, if you would please. All right, next we have the actual resolution to move ahead with the construction manager appointment.
I wasn't muted.
Okay.
Would anyone like to read that in?
I can do it.
Thank you, Counselor Mankey.
Resolved that the Newington Town Council, upon recommendation of the Anna Reynolds School Project Building Committee, hereby authorizes Keith Chapman, Town Manager, to negotiate and enter into an agreement with Newfield Construction of Hartford, Connecticut, to provide construction manager services for the Anna Reynolds School renovation project. This appointment is based on Newfield Construction's response to the town's RFP number 3, 2020-21. Their interview with the project building committee on July 1st and their written fee proposal, totaling an estimated amount of $661.30 plus $52,400 for each month longer than anticipated that the project takes to complete.
Thank you, Counselor Mankey. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Braverman. Any further discussion on this?
Don't we have to have public comments between somewhere in here?
Yes, we do. Yep, we do. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I don't see any council hands up. At this point, I would allow public participation on this because we did waive the rules this evening. If any member of the public wants to join us in the Zoom application, it would be a raise your hand in the participants window or *9 if you're on your phone. Right now, we have 2 attendees in the public window, and I do not see any hands up. So we will continue on. All right. Just give me 1 second. I don't see anybody's hands up. So going back to council, is there any other council comment or question? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Woods.
Have a good night, you all.
Take
You
it
as
easy.
well.
Good night.
Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to move on. Next item on our agenda is the Economic Development Employee Incentive. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Chapman. This is his incentive program.
Yes, this is a program that we've created that would actually enhance our abilities to recruit new businesses into town, whether they be occupying existing buildings or occupying new buildings. We've said from day one that we want all of our employees to be part of the economic development effort in the town. And we've taken the team of maybe 4 or 5 people, and now we want to expand it to 165 or 64 employees. And the way it would work is for employees that visit other businesses or become aware of other businesses that we don't currently have in town, that hopefully would complement what we already have in town for, we'll say, retail and so forth. For an example, if somebody's up at Cape Cod or at Myrtle Beach, wherever they may be, if they run across a business in their vacation time or regular time or whatever, and they find it to be a business that they feel has value if they were in Newington, then we want to encourage our employees to actually get into a conversation with the business owners or representatives and encourage them to come and consider Newington. And if in fact a company does decide to settle in Newington, the employee that entices them to come to Newington and introduces them to Newington, that employee would be awarded we'll say a bounty or a reward for finding this business coming in. And it's on a scale of less than 1,000 feet or less, they would get a $250 payment, going all the way up to, if it's over 75,000 square feet or more, they would get a one-time payment of $2,500. So it's based upon the size of the building that the new business would occupy. And it's based upon the employee being the contact that invites them in, works with us, lets us know who they've invited in. And if that company comes to Newington, then they would, upon the issue of a CO being presented to the business, they will also receive a payment, one-time payment based upon that sliding scale. I don't know of any other town that has ever done this, but I believe that it's not going to cost us a penny if it fails, but it could actually provide significant revenue for the town if we're successful. So we'd like to see all of our employees promote Newington. It's a great place to live and work, and we want to let the world know that. So this is a program that we created, and we'd like to have the council support it and let us put it into place and then see what happens. And if it's successful, great. If it fails, it doesn't cost us a penny. So that's essentially it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chapman. Counselor Mankey?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think it makes the employees part of the team. It makes them, go out and sell our town, and that's a good thing. So I'm fully in favor of this.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Yeah, Keith, I think that, this is another example of you, thinking outside the box and being innovative. I know this is kind of petty, but one of the things that came to my mind, I'm assuming you said that, because you were talking about space and building, because what I was thinking about, well, what if somebody, has their cousin come from New York and has a home-based building? I mean, did this excludes home office-based businesses? I mean, it's not really clear in here, and I don't know whether you should make it clear.
Yeah, this was not intended to, and well, of course, we want to encourage all businesses, but home-based, good question, Gail. Hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, you might want to clarify that and think about it a little.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will think about it, talk to our staff and see what they think. And then before you take a vote, if you will take a vote, at next meeting, we'll have an answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Counselor Donahue?
Yeah, Keith, is there a certain amount of time that the business has to be in place before the award is given out?
No, I don't see any reason to have a timetable. If a company comes in and they do settle in Newington, and once they are receiving their CO, that would be the key for the bonus to be paid.
Okay, all right. I like it.
Counselor Minor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree that I think it's a good thought. It's definitely something outside the box that I've never heard of another municipality doing, which is great. My question is, if somebody is looking to contact the town for, lack of a better term, to contact an economic development director or whoever is in charge, how are you going to handle that situation? Who takes the call? Who's eligible for it? Does it get handed off to somebody else? How do you think you'd see that working?
Well, the way I would see it working, Chris, is that the information would have to come through the employee, not through any contacts into the town. Certain people are not going to be eligible to get an award. Those that work on the economic development team will be prohibited from participating in this. But the key would be that the individual employee would have to come to my office, report that they talked to John Smith and such a business, and give us all the details of where they're currently located, how did they discover them, and that would become part of the record. So if we found that somebody, we'll say, inadvertently captured a telephone call for a major company that wants to come into town, they would have to provide basic information to prove that this was not through a telephone call that came into the town hall. It would be through their own efforts. So we'll have safeguards in place so we wouldn't have that happen. But I would not anticipate any of our employees participating in anything that would be questionable. This is solely them finding a business to bring into Newington.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's worth every opportunity to have everybody try to advocate for bringing new business into town. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Counselor Nagel?
Yeah, I'd also like to send my approval of the unique idea of having this process go through. Congratulations on the idea, Keith. I truly hope it's successful. Comment, perhaps one of the criteria, beside others that you may come up with before the next meeting, if we have a resolution, is the signing of a lease by the particular company and/or a purchase of a building, which would have obviously a time frame and whatever, which would be binding for them. Just a thought.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands up. This will move to our agenda for next meeting under old business for us to consider action on it.
Thank you.
Next item up this evening is discussion of the capital improvement program. As you all know, on November 24th of 2020, this council took action and suspended the CIP committee during the 2021 and 2022 budget year. And we authorized the town manager and finance director to prepare the CIP plan for presentation as part of our budget process. So we are adding, it is on this evening's agenda for us to discuss and decide where we want to go from here. We had kind of viewed that, I think our thought process at the time was to suspend it and see how it worked out and what we thought after the budget process was completed. And so it's being brought forward for our reconsideration this evening. Mr. Chapman, do you want to add anything to this discussion before we open it up?
Let me just update you where we are. As you all know, COVID really put a damper on doing things throughout the whole town. And, you know, we had a sizable amount of money that was able to be put into the CIP plan this year, recognizing with the Owens report that the town has a lot of different needs for their infrastructure right now. And we're in the process of bringing on a facilities director for the town side. I know that the Board of Ed is doing the same thing on their side right now. So we haven't quite got everything in place to move forward with projects other than we're working on the ambulance building, the library, the senior center. So those buildings are already being addressed. We're finishing up the town hall. We know that we have issues with the pools in town that we're going to have to address probably over the next year, we'll say. So we want to wait until we get the facilities manager on board, provide him with the 4,000 pages of Owens report, put him to work. And, you know, he'll be working with Paul and Gary primarily moving forward to get established. So, you know, we're still in a flux right now, but we anticipate that within a month or two, once the facilities manager is on board, we should be in good shape to move forward with a number of projects. You know, what we're concerned with certainly is that we know we have roofs that are leaking and so forth. So we have to address those issues that are required to move forward, and then look at those items that maybe will enhance the existing infrastructure that we have. So we're almost there, and I'm glad we have the plan in place, and we just need to now work with the staff and then recommend to you what projects we want to move forward with and the basis for those projects moving forward.
Okay. I know in the past, having served on the CIP committee a few times, and I was a past chair, the question always kind of came about. Right now, it's comprised of 3 members of the council and 2 from the Board of Education. And then there's obviously staff that are there as well, but, you know, we basically are presented with a list from the town manager typically and his staff that indicates what the current needs or priorities are. And then as a committee, we ended up oftentimes making decisions based on what we thought made sense dollar-wise instead of what made sense in terms of priorities and necessity. And so I think, in my mind at least, eliminating the committee piece of this would eliminate some of the, for lack of a better term, political volleying that can happen during budget time when it comes to CIP. It would eliminate that at the committee level, and it would put it at the council table. And it, you know, hopefully with the town manager's input and his staff's input as to why things are a priority and why we need them, we could avoid, you know, some of the mistakes I think that have been made in the past where we had cut things out of CIP, as I mentioned, just sheerly for budgetary purpose and not really based on priority. So in my mind, that would be one of the biggest reasons for eliminating the committee piece of this and allowing it to be town staff that brings the list forward to the entire council for consideration during budget, instead of having that extra level where the committee perhaps cuts things, then brings it to the council to consider whether we keep or cut. And so this would eliminate that extra step and allow the council just have the final say, which always was the case, but there was that extra step to it. So those are my.
If I may, Mayor, just to, I failed to mention that we're not waiting for the facilities manager for the road program. We're heavily into the milling and paving. You know, traditionally you've done about 3.5 to 4 miles a year. We're going to actually do about 10 miles by adding more money in, because we fell way behind. Doing 3 or 4 miles doesn't work. So we've got to play catch up. So this year is going to be a banner year for new pavement, as well as probably next year.
Great.
And then we'll stay on a fixed, you know, mileage going forward, about 5 miles per year.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mankey?
Yeah, I was not here when the original CIP committee was formed, but I'm always in favor of letting professionals, the people who do this for a living, who can put politics aside and just look at needs and prioritize those needs and then put dollars to them. So I'm always in favor of letting the professionals make that determination. The council still has a say on the CIP, because we actually vote on the CIP, part of our budget. So we have our say. But I agree that just takes that middle committee out of it, that just kind of sometimes I think not on purpose, but they sort of screw up the plan. If there's a 5-year plan, they go ahead and just wreck it or screw it up. And I think that just it's not good for us. It's better to have the professionals do this. We get to vote on it at the end anyway. But I would be in favor of just abolishing the committee.
Okay. And we've said this before too, you know, you don't want to bind another council. So if we abolish it, then we are not binding another council. They certainly can do whatever they see fit in the future too. If there becomes a need for this to be reinstated in some way, shape, or form, then it could be revamped and done in a way that might work better than the current structure, because the current structure, I think we've said over and over, is not working the way it was intended. Councilor Nagel.
I would concur with the mayor and most of what Tim has said concerning the CIP committees. Served on it before it was handed over this year to the town manager, and served on it one other time with Mayor Del Buono. And I see that its original intent, whatever it may be, it was not developing into what probably it was originally visioned, and eliminating the screw-ups, as Tim has mentioned, intentional or unintentional, and also the political element of it, whatever it may be, is a plus, especially a plus in this particular area. And having the town do it, it saves the process. The CIP monies are still being allocated. That fund is still there, even if we eliminate the CIP committee as such. And the process, if there is a discussion, is brought to the total council as part of the budget. So it gives everyone a say. It gives the council, which basically deals with the finances of the town, control over that, and strength over that. Whereas at the present time, there's a question as to buildings that are not part of the Board of Ed. Really, is that appropriate for them to vote on that or not? So it eliminates that question that maybe in some people's minds in terms of funding and who votes for what funding, and eliminates the process being too weighed down, and eliminates the competition, which it seems sometimes between different departments, and coming forth to the CIP committee as it used to stand or does stand before this year with projects that the CIP does not have the money for. And in some cases, projects that didn't belong in that particular bailiwick, as good as they were, that could be in other parts of the budget. So I see this as a positive way of dealing with this particular problem, and putting it, as has been said before, in the hands of the professional. And with that, beginning of a plan with the facilities, that big survey that gives us a clear idea as to where monies are needed and should go for projects, whether they are flashy ones or ones that are basic needs for the town, but perhaps the public is not aware they haven't been taken care of for many, many years, and are due to be taken care of because they will affect us in the future. I hesitate to mention anything specifically because I don't want to get way down in details. I'd rather make the general point. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Nagel. Counselor Minor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, the only comment I would have is, as we went through the CIP earlier this year on our current budget, there were large silos of money. And my concern is moving forward that if we vote on it as a council, what I think is important is to know the details of where those projected budget allocations are versus, $3 million in roofs and just open large silos. The way the CIP project has been in the past is you could see the relative project costs for each project as it was presented. And as long as we have the ability to see those, and Keith had referenced earlier,
Okay.
come into place, that we would have some type of an idea in terms of exactly what the project designations were and what their projected costs were, and be able to look at it as a whole that way. The only other question I would have is, how does this impact the Board of Education in terms of their CIP projects and their participation on the committee? How is that going to happen moving forward?
Well, I will just say they are hiring their facilities manager right now. We still intend to try to make this a shared services project. So they will have their facilities manager working hand in hand with our facilities manager on the facility. So that's where I see their opportunity to have their issues presented. For an example, I can tell you two things that occurred just this last week. One was we got a call about our building, the American Legion Hall on Willard, having a roof leak. So we responded out. That's now like the sixth roof that has to be worked on, which, it's in the Owens report that it was on its last leg. Well, now we're trying to fix it, but we'll fix it correctly as we move forward, because there's no point in patching a roof without fixing it properly. The second issue was the high school roof. There's leaks at the high school. We're working with the Board of Education, their superintendent right now, on finding a solution that hopefully will be at a lower cost than it would be otherwise if we went through the whole committee function. And it'll be done this summer rather than next summer, where we continue to have roof leaks. So that we're working on. There's a pretty big discrepancy from the dollars that were we'll say proposed to to the school side compared to the dollars that were just proposed to me after I had a roofer come in and walk the roof and so forth. So these are the types of things that we need to do more of with not only the Board of Education, but all of the various departments in town, that we need to look at things a little from a different perspective that will save the town money and be more timely in getting repairs done. We can't afford to have these roofs continue to leak any more than they already are. And we recognize that, where I don't think that that was necessarily the case in the past. And it's true with any other systems we have, whether it be HVAC or windows or floors or anything else. We want to prioritize, once the facility managers get on board on both sides, the Board of Ed and the town, and then move forward. We'll provide to the council, a comprehensive list of what we've concluded we'd like to do this year using the monies that you have allocated. And it'll be an opportunity for the council to have a full understanding of where the money's going. And if there's a real objection, we need to talk about it with the council. But I think that, we'll get all of the basic information in a form that is understandable and a timetable that will work for the benefit of both or all the departments in the town.
Right. Just with the Paul, if I remember correctly, that was actually slated for roof replacement either last year or current budget year. I thought that was up and scheduled, and maybe it just didn't occur because of COVID and everything else. But that's the type of project that I'm talking about, that we just historically have moved down the road, and unfortunately reallocating those funds to other projects. And that's the only thing I don't want to see happen, is if we allocate funding for a project and we vet the cost out in advance that it should be this through competitive bidding, that we're able to take care of the project and cross it off the list and move on to the next.
Right.
And the same thing would be doing additional maintenance or putting additional funds in his maintenance account to spend the additional money now to get 5 more years out of a piece of equipment, versus not doing the maintenance on it and costing us in a year because it didn't make it to 5 years. Just short money versus long money. Thank you.
Totally agree, Chris. Totally agree.
Thank you.
All right, Counselor Mankey.
And I agree with Councilor Minor. I think details are important. I think in the budget we just passed, some of the details were a little bit missing because we just got the Owens report. We're still trying to digest that report, and that takes a while to do. So I agree. If we put money towards a project, we should do that project. But again, I would prefer that the professionals decide which project we should work on than the politicians.
Absolutely agree. All right, I don't see any other hands. Anything else, guys? All right, we'll move this to our agenda for next meeting for consideration and action. Okay, next on our agenda for this evening is the Permanent Municipal Building Commission creation. This is something that Mr. Chapman had talked with us about a little bit in the past as a possibility, and he's now bringing it forward for our consideration. The idea that we would have a permanent building committee in place instead of having to create new committees each time we have a project in town for consideration. And this would help alleviate some of the burden of that and make sure that there's really one set of eyes looking at all projects to make sure we have the same information available in regards to each project. But Mr. Chapman, I'll let you talk more about the specifics of it.
The idea behind it is that the town historically has worked with various building committees at various times, most of which are not necessarily experienced and trained people in construction and building design and so forth. So it was obvious, I don't want to cast aspersions on anyone, but it was obvious with this town hall that we've had a lot of issues, some of which couldn't be avoided and others that maybe could have been avoided. And part of the responsibility of the building committee of town hall was to try to digest what was being said. And with value engineering, it became a little more complicated because things had to be cut to fit into the budget. And some of those cuts will maybe come back to bite us. And we already are seeing some of that occur now. And it's not the fault of the committee. It's just the issue is that you have to really know buildings and the various entities within the building to really grasp on what if you do A, what happens to B and C and D and so forth. And we know we're facing some expenses right now that we probably could have avoided, or the cost would have been reduced if it was handled differently. So what I'm suggesting is that we create a team of professional people combined with appointments from both the two parties in town that will be more consistent and better, we'll say, aware of how things should occur in building renovations and so forth to avoid any pitfalls that may come along the way. So what we've done is we've come up with language now for a permanent building committee, taking much of the language from the existing building committee resolution. And if James can put the proposal up, I think we can go through it quickly.
Would you like to go with the revised language first?
Yeah, let's go with the revised now. Yeah, what happened since you got your packets? If you recall, last Friday, which is when we developed this, that we had a major storm going through the town. And unfortunately, I didn't get to review the final with James before James had to release it out to you folks. So you'll see that there are a couple of changes that I've made with James this morning to have it read a little bit differently than what you have. And so you've got the original that James had sent you, and then you'll see on this sheet where we've changed. You've highlighted those, James?
Yes, the original is in red and strike through, and the new information is in bold or underlined. This one I forgot to underline, but everything should be underlined to indicate that that's new language that we've proposed.
Okay, and we'll just take definitions of number one, building project. The current language calls for the committees to be involved for costs estimated in excess of $100,000. That language probably goes back a good number of years, where $100,000 was probably equal to $1 million today. $100,000 doesn't buy anything. The roof that we're looking at right now at the highway, at the high school, the portion of the roof we're looking at is well above $100,000 to repair. It's less than $1 million, but if we had to go to the building committee every time we were going to spend $100,000, you'd probably get very few people that would want to be on the building committee. And there's really no need for that. These types of expenditures under $1 million are pretty common. If something comes up where we need architects to design and it's a new build and so forth, then maybe we would bring it down and do it anyway at 100,000. But we'd like to have $1 million cost be the break-off point before the committee is required to be in place. So we'll go through the changes and then you guys can discuss it. So what's the next one, James?
Our next one should be part of our appointment composition.
Okay. What we're suggesting now is that we have a 5 voting member committee. And we want to have at least 3 of those individuals that have expertise in construction and buildings and so forth. And those of the 5, 3 would be appointed by the town manager. The other 2 would be appointed by each political party. The 3 that I would appoint would be professional people that have well understanding and depth in construction and so forth. The two that would be appointed by the two parties, or the one for each party, would be whatever you as the politicians or council determine. There are people that were on the building committee for the town hall that are pretty well experienced, that you would probably want to consider putting on this committee as well moving forward. But we're trying to take all the politics out of it and trying to limit the amount of people that are going to serve the town in this capacity. We also are going to have staggered appointments. So we'll always have people that have some knowledge and experience in serving on committees be on the committee. And then along with that is that the next page, I think, may reflect that we want to have our building official, facilities director, fire marshal, town engineer, and IT director as non-voting advisory members that are actively involved, which has not always been the case. Now, if we're doing a roof, we may not have, we'll say, the IT director involved because there'll be very little for him to be involved in, we'll say. So those individuals will serve the committee as deemed appropriate. I was going to suggest that they would be voting members, but I looked at what took place recently down in Florida at the condo that collapsed, and I concluded that that would be not in our best interest to have our staff be voting members, because down the road, if something bad were to ever happen, they would have a role to play that would be somewhat of a conflict of interest if they were participating in building something and then something bad happens and then they're going to investigate it. So we've determined it would be better not to have those individuals as voting members, but certainly be advisory to any committee that's formed. Okay, 3A, which is an important one. No member appointed by the town manager or either party shall serve at any other elected or appointed board, commission, or position within the town. So this committee will be not, we'll say, influenced by any other roles they have in town. There are some people that serve on 2 or 3 boards at the same time. We're suggesting that this committee be solely dedicated. If you're on this committee, you're on no other committees, because that way there's no, influences, any pressure being put on to, get something done that maybe they're on another committee and they want that particular building worked on. So we're trying to keep this as neutral as possible, but professional as possible. Any other changes?
We do have one more, which was the reimbursement clause.
Okay, and each committee member will maybe reimburse for necessary expenses as approved by the town manager for expenses incurred in the course of their duties for the commission.
Keith, your microphone is cutting out. I'm not sure if you're in close proximity or not.
Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe James, can you take that?
Sure. We specifically added this clause in because of the fact that there may be times when there's a course that somebody needs to take for their duties in order to be able to properly review. So we wanted to make sure if they needed it, we wanted to make sure as the town, we were properly funding it. It shouldn't be on that volunteer to make up that difference. It is a town organization and a town board, and it's benefiting all citizens. So it made the most sense to have something in there that allowed us to go through and give them some reimbursement if they had to expend their own funds for any reason.
Okay.
I believe, let me just double check. I believe that is all of our proposed changes. Everything else was, most of this was the same language we have in our current permanent public building committees already. Little changes were made based upon the definitions that were created at the beginning of it in order to make it a little more cohesive, but I'm willing to make any changes or suggestions that any of you may come up with as we go along and be able to present that at our next meeting.
Okay, great. We've got a few hands up, so we'll start with Counselor Minor.
Just one quick one. James, can you explain the reimbursement again? I didn't get any of it.
Sure. There may be some times when a member of the committee, based upon their duties or their review, may need to go for additional training, understanding coursework. Could be any number of reasons. Could be travel to go to an organization who may be doing work for us so they could better understand what the project is handling. So in that aspect, we want to make sure that they're not taking off that entire onus to pay for that when it's really the town's benefit for them to be able to go there, get the expertise and utilize it for us. So that allows the town manager to determine, depending on what that training or classwork may be, whether it's appropriate to their duties on the committee. That make sense?
Yeah, to a degree. I got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Counselor Menke.
Just a couple questions. Keith, do other towns have some kind of a similar relationship or organization?
Mm-hmm.
Communities that have permanent.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I didn't hear you, Keith. I'm sorry. And I assume that if we're building, if we're building a firehouse, the fire department would be asked to participate, but they wouldn't be a voting member of the building committee. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that is actually under the composition as well, item 6.
Yeah, I'm losing it.
Okay. Okay, cool. I did see that, but I want to make sure that's the case. So this would take it out of the, I think the building committees we currently have is a department wants something built and they get their people on the building committee and then they just go ahead and get it built. This would be a committee that would look at the whole town as a whole, and we would have some consistency on what we're building and how we're building it and how much we're spending to build it. So I think this is a great idea. I've always thought we should have somebody who's a full-time building committee that just looks at all the projects in town, not just projects as they come up ad hoc.
Correct. And this is another one of those pieces that we've added in, which is the statement of needs. So we're requiring, say the fire department is coming to you and saying, we need fire department 6. It's going to be their requirement that they go through as the proposing body to you to say, number 10 specifically outlines that these are all of the reasons why. These are the estimated costs why. These are the furnishings that we're going to need in order to make the building work. All of these pieces would be coming to you first before you automatically bring that to the permanent building committee. So you see that first and you make the determination. Does this meet the requirement? Do you find that the proposing body is bringing you the information you need? And is it a project that should go forward in the town? So it takes that political side out of it. It allows them to give you the facts, and then you make a determination if it should go to them.
I like it.
We had tried to get this off the ground back in, I think, 15, and we got bogged down in the details. And, I'm really pleased that Mr. Chapman listened to us when we said this is something we wanted, and he was able to bring us a comprehensive proposal. This is a wonderful thing for us to consider. Councilor Annis, I think you're next.
Thank you. James, can you go back to the composition of the committee, please?
Moment.
Why did you,
Hold on.
number one, I do know that there's a lot of surrounding towns that do have public building committees. I would like to see a couple of what their compositions are. I don't think 5, if you're doing 3 from trades, I don't know if that's going to give you enough trade. So what was the thought about bringing it down to 5 and 3 being of trades?
I hope you guys can hear me now because I moved, so maybe that'll help. The idea was that, we recognize that the people that we'd like to serve on this committee may not be readily available at all times because they have occupations that they may still be working, they may not be retirees. And, you know, I think that we'd like to start out with 5. If we find that the 5-member team is too small, then we would come back and suggest an expansion to maybe 7. I mean, we could do that now, but I don't know as we would necessarily find, you know, enough volunteer professional people to serve on this committee. So my view was that let's try to get, you know, three experienced people on the committee, and with 2 other people that you make the appointments of, and see how it works. We will have the advantage of having all of our professional staff be available to assist as necessary. And if need be, we can always request information from another party, we'll say, that's not on the committee. So I don't know, it's just that we could go with 5, we could go with 7, we can go with 9, but I just think 5 would be manageable, and as a start, see how it works out.
Okay, so can we get some other towns that have public building committees and see what their composition is? Because I do know there is. And
Yeah,
then my other question is, the $1 million, shouldn't that be in conjunction with our charter of the 975?
Certainly, we could do that. Yeah, that's fine. Well, I just picked the number out because it's just $100,000 in today's money is just peanuts, really, when you're talking about what types of money we need for our infrastructure. So, yeah, is it 975 or 950, whatever that figure is. Yeah, that would be good to match that. That's good. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
so I will say, part of it, when I was creating this, was research. So East Windsor, Canton, let's see, I don't remember who that one was. Let's see, I actually did pull one out of Massachusetts, as well as, I think it was in Norwood, Massachusetts. There were 5 or 6 of them that I started looking at and utilizing a few of their clauses from, which I thought would benefit the town in the creation of this committee. So
Can you send
I'm
those
happy.
out?
What was that?
Can you send those out?
I certainly can. As soon as we finish the meeting, I'll send them right out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Minor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just a couple comments. In reference to the town hall project as it was, that project was primarily based on the budget and staying within the budget. And decisions were made at the beginning of that project that were made not by the committee, by professional staff of the town at the time. That needs to be clearly stated, that decisions were made that the committee was not privy to in order to keep the project on budget and on task. So my only thing I would say is moving forward to properly budget these projects and to not try to shrink to fit a specific mold that just can't be fit. And, you know, the reference of having a body and makeup of 5, I think should be a little bit larger. I have a little bit of concern with being that small and trying to get the trades involved. I would completely agree with. And I think a lot of the aggravation would be lessened if there was, you know, staff members as well as, you know, project liaisons from the trades participating from the beginning to the end, and having a standing committee to be able to do multiple projects, I think makes sense as well. The only other thing I would say is to make sure that there is representation by as wide a platform of trade as you can with professionals. You know, we have got architects in town, we've got construction managers in town that have expressed concerns about different projects over the years, but they have been apprehensive to get involved because they don't feel that their opinions are truly being heard and being acted upon. So that would be the only caveat that I would put to that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Counselor Minor mentioned that some decisions were made that were not brought to the committee level at the town hall piece, and he's not wrong there. I served on that committee, and there are many things that, looking back now, never came to committee level and were done kind of by town staff and construction manager kind of at their weekly meetings. So procedurally, I mean, that really was just a violation of procedure, quite frankly, at the beginning of the project. And so, you know, we would just have to make sure as a council that we are on top of how they are following procedure and protocol. And in terms of shrinking the project, you know, in the case of the town hall, we were bound by a referendum. So that was the purpose for it, but the committee should have been the ones making those decisions. I agree that should not have happened in any other fashion. So that would be something to make sure is built in here.
If I may just add to that, again, if you recall, I wasn't here at the beginning of the project. So I'm not at all trying to discredit the work of the committee. I just know that the end result was not as good as it could be. And if it's the staff that created that problem, that's unfortunate. It should never happen. And hopefully it will never happen again.
Yeah, I'm certainly not faulting the committee. If it didn't come to them, then they can't be faulted for it for sure. So, Counselor Donahue.
Yeah, just one thing, Keith, is just, I would like to see it be a true building committee. You know, I'm on the Mill Pond Pool Committee, and there was no building committee. We had no input into the design, right? I mean, we're an approval committee, right? Here's a design, here's what I recommend. And, you know, other than Carol's great suggestion of a solar panel on the roof, you know, there was no room for discussion. So, you know, it's to come to a building committee with a plan that you already have is, you know, not a building committee. At least it's an approval committee.
I totally agree. And that's what we don't want to have happen in the future. You know, we want not only the committee to be in control, but we also want the input from our staff to the committee as these various, like the building official, look, put it this way, you know, we want to make sure that the end result is the best end result we can achieve. And by using a professional permanent committee combined with the input from, you know, those that are code compliant and so forth type people, we feel that, you know, we're on the right road to really doing good things.
And the only other thing with the, you know, we talked about the $1 million versus the 975. Maybe it could be some language that says, you know, in accordance with, you know, funds specified in the charter. That way, you don't have to go back and change it every time. You know, you know.
Good point. Very good point. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Counselor Donahue. Counselor Menke.
Yeah, as I said in my CIP discussion, I prefer the professionals handle this. So I think a permanent building committee is a good idea. Hello? I also think if the committee works together on many projects, then they're going to get to know how to do these. I think one of the problems we have is every time we set a new building committee, they got to kind of learn the new ropes, and it's easy for them to get sidetracked. It's easy for them to lose focus, not on purpose, but it's also easy for them to be influenced by the contractor who says we need this, we need that, and because you would have no other knowledge, so you just have to take their kind of word for it. So I think this is a great idea, and again, I would support it.
Thank you, Counselor Menke. Counselor Minor.
Thank you. Just two quick comments. One would be a lot of towns have utilized the services of a third party plan review. And what that does is takes the pressure and the onus off of the town staff as well as the political body to not interfere at all and allow the project to be reviewed entirely independent. That's a common practice on a lot of building committees and a lot of other municipalities. And I think it's a smart decision to do. Obviously, we have our own internal review first, and then it goes to a third party for final review. And you don't have concerns about whether or not something is code compliant or whether it is, and it handles those types of issues. And the second thing, would this building committee also be handling large scale projects like Anna Reynolds, like, Town Hall, or would it be primarily focused on the smaller, larger scale projects, for lack of a better term? What's your thought on that, Keith?
I would like to see this committee be taking the lead on all projects, whether they be big or small. And again, we don't know how busy this committee is going to be until we really lay out the next, 5 or 6 years through the capital improvement plan, what exactly is going to get done. We know we're going to be busy up front, but hopefully if we get caught up in some fashion to the demands that we are facing right now, I think that one committee handling all projects would be the ideal situation.
All right, thank you.
All right, Counselor Minor? Oh, I'm sorry, you're all set, Chris. Counselor Camillo?
Back in the fall, we had a meeting about the Anna Reynolds School, and I had asked Colliers how they felt about a professional building committee. And they said they get more done. Politics are out of it, and it's the way to go. They're hesitant to say it because we were all sitting there, but they did say it. So I think this is a great way to do things. Thanks, Keith.
All right, Counselor Menke?
Not to belabor the point, but this building committee could also get additional help if they felt they need it, as Councilor Minor suggested. But I think the first step is to form this committee, and then we can go from there.
Let me just add, if any of you have relations with experienced professional type people, please send over the names to me and then hopefully their phone numbers, because we want to, see who's out there and who would be willing to serve. And then, as was pointed out, we don't want to have 3 members all experienced and knowledgeable in one aspect of buildings. We want to have diversity within the 3. So if you know of anybody that you think would make a good commissioner on this committee, that would be good to know.
Okay, great. Any other council comment or question? Counselor Minor?
Just one final comment. The only thing that I would like to say is just to consider going with a committee to represent a wider body of trades. I think that would be advantageous for everybody involved, as well as not having it so confined to not being able to have a quorum. If you're only with 5, you're really getting down to an edge. If you have a member or 2 out, you're not going to be able to meet. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand your concern there, but I also worry about trying to fill the committee. We have such a hard time in town, I think, getting people that are willing to volunteer. And this committee, depending on the projects that come forward, could be pretty busy. So I don't know, to me, 5-member may be a good place to start. As Keith mentioned earlier, we could always make it bigger if we found that there was a need to do that. But sometimes filling these positions, especially with people with certain expertise, can be very challenging to get people to step forward to do these roles. So that would be my concern there. And then the committee handling all the projects. I know, Chris, you had asked that, but Keith, your answer, I know you said you would like this committee to handle all of the projects. And I think one of the benefits I see to that would be that, if they're working on an Anna Reynolds, they're going to know exactly what the bonding issues are, what the timelines are, and how impacted we would be as a municipality. And if we want to introduce another project, what that would look like and how that would impact as well. So I think having one committee handle all projects would make a lot of sense in terms of being able to see the bigger picture and not have bits and pieces amongst each committee in terms of their knowledge of the other projects. So I like the idea of having this one cover all of the projects that come forward.
If I may, Mayor, just to intercede here, I guess this does not prevent, if we really got busy and we had projects that were multitasking at the same time, I see no reason why you can't have 2 permanent project building committees made up of professionals. You know, this doesn't negate the idea of having a duplicate committee made up of 5 other people. So that's one consideration that we could utilize if this committee were overburdened with projects.
Keith, do you think it would make sense to add some sort of language into this that would allow, in the event that there are multiple projects going on, it would be at the discretion of the either town manager to bring forward to the council or at the discretion of the council to create a second permanent building committee should the need arise?
I don't see why we can't put it in there. It may never be exercised, but James, can you work up the language?
I'll look up the language on that.
Okay, sure. And that, Chris, well, I think would address some of your concern. You know, and we'll see if we can get a good first committee established, then if the need arises, then we go for a second good committee and work it that way. So I don't know, but it depends on how many projects you have going all at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessary, but it's a matter of whether we want to add it now or have to add it later, you know? Lots of hands up. Councilor Camilla, you're next.
And one of the things with COVID, we've learned how to use Zoom. So when you can't be in the meeting, you can be in the meeting wherever you are. So I don't think you'd be short on people because they're doing something else. They can take a moment and join through their phone, through their laptop. And I think we get a lot more accomplished with Zoom. So that's all.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Yeah, at this point, I'm really leaning more towards the committee of 5 versus expanding, you know, initially. And again, I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I don't think we need a plumber, a contractor, a landscaper, an architect, an electrician, an HVAC person, a mason, you know, I don't think we need a specialist in each trade, but what we do, if we get 3, if you're in the general business, you know the questions to ask, you know the pitfalls, you've seen the issues. Again, I really don't think you have to have a specialist in each possible trade that can come along. But you do need somebody who has experience working on construction or building projects, no matter what their trade is, that has seen things go wrong or seen things go right and knows the questions to ask and what the general prices are. So I think starting smaller, and then if we need to expand, we can expand.
Okay. Councilor Camillo, is your, oh, there we go. Thank you. Councilor Menke, you're next.
Yeah, if we're having a permanent building committee, then to form another permanent building committee and then another permanent building committee kind of defeats the purpose of having a permanent building committee. So I would be in favor of one building committee. If we need to have a subcommittee to talk about some specific details, that could be possible. But to just if we're going to form other committees as we get other projects, and we're back to the same thing we are now, just forming a building committee for every project, and that's just not what I like. The idea of having one committee who looks at the entire town in the whole, and not just one special interest or another special interest or another special interest. And in that light too, I think that somewhere there should be a role here for the finance director, because it's really great to have a building committee to build the building, but if we can't afford to pay for it, then we're wasting our time to build the building because we're going to go in debt. So somewhere the finances have to come in here, and can we take on 3 projects in 1 year? Probably not. We need to finish one and then start the next one, just like I do have to do in my own house. I can't take on 3 projects unless I hit the lottery, 3 projects the same year. So I would think the finance director, if we could have some, maybe them as a non-voting advisory member, just to see what the bond rates are and what's our capacity to borrow. And how will it affect the bottom line of the town finances? Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Menke. Counselor Minor?
Yes, we've referenced high amount, but what the responsibilities would be on the low side, Keith? What project, what range are you proposing?
Well, again, what I'm suggesting is, I'll give you the example. We have the high school roof. Now, the high school roof, for the portion that is leaking and that has to be repaired immediately, is going to be in the range of, we'll say 200,000 to 500,000. To me, that's something that we administratively should be able to handle without involving a committee. It's an existing roof. It's not a full rip down and replace. It's more of taking the materials off, putting a new 30-year roof on, and then complete the project. So something like that, I would think we could do internally without involving the committee. I think it all depends on. I'm sorry.
No, sorry, Keith. What about by statute, James? I know, Tim, you remember the ADA bathroom at the high school, the ADA improvements, that was a required building committee. James,
Right.
you know?
Actually, that's one thing I was just going to bring up, but I was waiting for everybody to finish up. So I want to say back in February, we did get a request from the school system to create a permanent building commission for the school. Now, I actually incorporated that same language, and you'll see it under powers and duties, specifically to allow this committee to also handle school projects. So if they came up with an ADA or an accessibility or a door replacement or window replacement, whatever that may be, it would still come through this. They would still go through, they would create their feasibility study, determine costs, bring it forward. You guys would review it and refer it over to the building commission to go forward. If you guys don't feel that that project has the funding available right now, you don't move it forward right now. But I made sure that that language was specifically in there because that is a request usually of a lot of Board of Educations. They create their own permanent building committee in order to manage state projects. In our aspect, we try to keep it all under one auspice. So the council creates individual public building committees in order to manage those projects. In this aspect, it'll be one committee, one group of knowledge base, bringing it forward and continue it through to the end.
Okay, but by the department, State Department of Education or statute, is there any requirement to a minimum? So if we had a $50,000, door replacement project or $100,000 security upgrade for a man trap, whatever the case may be, would it be required to go through the building committee, or could the town handle it internally without the building committee? Is, I think, what I'm getting at.
That gets into a very gray area. A lot of times, in order to receive the reimbursement, they usually do request that it goes through the local building committee, whether it's created by the commission for the school system or by the town itself. In this aspect, if we're creating this town-wide and school department-wide, it may be of a benefit to add the language into it that projects may come in that are underneath it, but are required to be reviewed by the committee. This actually ties back to a 2008 OLL report, and I'm happy to send that out as well, where there was a lot of discussion about different efforts and the funding that goes along with school boards and maintenance. So it's an interesting setup, and they did a nice breakdown on it. So I'll send that through so you guys can see it. But in this aspect, at least we're covering our bases and saying, this committee is responsible for all facilities, whether it's town or school.
Okay, so you're not necessarily presenting to have a threshold on the low side as well.
Not at this time.
Just to figure.
Yeah, we're starting at that 1 million mark. But like I said, you may run into that period where in order for the state to accept reimbursement back, because it is school specific and it directly affects a student, we may have a point where we may need to bring it in under that level.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Mankey?
Yeah, just those small projects won't take a lot of the committee's time, even for the code compliance. It was a quick, those meetings were pretty quick, Chris. We didn't last very long. So the committee permanent building committee could probably handle a couple of those small projects at one meeting.
Right. No, I'm just from the standpoint of a bottom threshold is what I was trying to get at. To
Yeah.
say a project over $250,000, whatever the threshold number may be, with the exception of, required school grant, participation by a building committee, I think would be the exception.
Right, exactly.
Yep, we could write that into it.
Okay. Any other council comment or discussion?
I want to just tie through a couple of pieces that are on the screen here, just to show it's not just about project reviews. So this, I've also got it created so that they would also handle under item 6, review of our town structures as well. So we've already done it through Owens. So we have a starting point to go forward with. Now we get an update from them. Maybe we're seeing a degrading of sidewall structure like we saw at Kellogg on their boiler room chimney. This would allow us to get to those items before they become a major problem, and we would have that update once every 2 years instead of once every 5 or 10 years. So that piece was added into it, and it allows them to report back to you guys so that you know what's going on, what the status of projects are, but it keeps the politics out of it. It just allows them to report to you as a committee. So that's item 7 as well. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew it wasn't just about project review, it's about facility review as well. So they could work in conjunction with our finance director, not our finance, our facilities director as well, or a building official or a fire marshal, and say, okay, we're seeing these safety issues, we're seeing these building issues, we're seeing these roofing issues. That way you get a clear picture of what's going on.
James, can you scroll down under definitions?
Which item would you like?
Well, I'm looking on the original packet though, so I don't know if it's in here. It's service equipment and major systems. Or was that changed? It's number 11 on the one I'm looking at.
There you are.
Page.
Okay. The reason I'm looking at this is when Chris was talking about lower end versus upper end, this is pretty specific to the types of things. And so like when Keith mentioned earlier that the roof at the high school, he doesn't feel like we need to move it to the committee level. But roofs is kind of included here. I just want to make sure I want to clear it up to make sure that either all of those things are included or all of those things are possibly, like, do we say that it's at the discretion of the council after review and based on the town manager's recommendation, whether to forward it to the committee? I just want to make sure we clear it up so that because I understand what Chris is saying. We have the maximum, we don't have a minimum, and where do we determine which projects go to this committee, or how does that get determined?
Again, if I may, if you look at the description of these items, some of these items could be very small in nature.
Right.
Others could be very large in nature. And I think that's where, the staff has to make a decision. Should this be referred over to the committee because of what it encompasses, or is it something that's pretty down and dirty and we can do it without interruption and move on? I mean, putting gutters on aren't going to be, significant in dollars for most cases, but maybe in one particular building, it may be significant. So we would kind of take that as each individual case comes up. But the dollar amount would be in the cases of gutters, let's just say it was $100,000. That would not go to the committee if we have the $1 million level that we're working on. But it may go if it was, complete redesign of the whole water control system of the whole roof system at the high school. Maybe it would go to the committee. I think that would be decided by staff, either the building official or the fire marshal or whoever that has the expertise on staff to make a recommendation to me let's send this to the committee because it's bigger than what we can handle internally by the facilities manager or whatever. There's no exact science in this.
Yeah,
And I-
I'm just wondering, because we always try to make sure the intent is as clear as possible, because if, you know, you're not around next year or the year after or the year after that, we want to make sure that the intent of it is clear enough that it would continue to carry on the way it was intended. So I don't know if you want to add some language in there that might indicate that these would go through town staff first and
Yeah,
determine
review,
if it's
yeah.
brought forward to the council to be considered for the permanent building committee, something like that. I'm just not sure how you want to clear it up, but food for thought.
Yeah, we can work on that piece. Now, I will mention that under the building project procedures, there is a procedure built into that, which is
Okay.
specifically the proposing body brings their recommendation through with a statement of needs to the council itself. You may say, oh, it's 500,000, you know, really, we don't need to bring this forward. Or you may say that this has exclusive need, such as handicap accessibility, whatever it may be, and you really want that taken under the auspice of a professional board versus just handling the town handling on its own. You want to go through that review process and make sure everything's completed. So that whole building procedure process and initiation and review and selection, that's all built into that to make sure that does it make sense for you as a committee, as a council, to move it forward to the committee to start the process. But it will start with you. It won't go to the committee unless they're the ones that are specifically suggesting the project based upon their building reviews.
Okay. And then certainly when it's at the council table, the town manager would be able to weigh in with town staff's opinion on it and whether or not they can handle it or want it to go to the building committee level. So that would make perfect sense. Thank you.
Right.
Councilor Minor?
No, I'll save it for next discussion. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't see any other hands up. So if we're all set with this item, we'll continue on with the agenda. This will move on and be on our July 27th agenda as well. Next item is discussion regarding land acquisition fund. This had come up during our budget discussions primarily. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page of my packet. But, the discussion really was during our last budget, we had determined that we wanted to make sure that land acquisition fund is a priority and that we were putting money into it. The language right now, the way it was created, we found it to be a little vague when we were discussing it. And so the language, you'll see the section refers to an amount not to exceed the amount which would be generated by the imposition of a tax of 2 mills against the property subject to tax. And so we wanted to just open it up for council discussion on whether or not we are happy with the way it is now, or if there are any changes that we would want to consider making moving forward to make sure the intent is being followed as we hit budget season again, not too far away, I hate to say. So I'll open it up to council discussion, or Mr. Chapman, if you have anything you'd like to add. I see Deputy Mayor Bedreiko's hand is up, and I think she's the one that was bringing this up during budget. So go ahead.
Well, I think also one of the points of contention was the word of shall versus must or may. I contended that the word shall is directive, where others didn't feel that it was directive. So I think that's got to be, I don't see that in here. Either that or it's got to be said that they may establish. Well, wait a minute.
And then it says there shall be posited.
Yeah, that's not our language. That's not our language.
It actually is. So the language that's in our code is actually the language of the statute.
But we don't have housing in there.
No, what I'm talking about is there shall be deposited into said fund annually an amount not to exceed the amount which would be generated by the imposition of. That language is statutory.
Right, but when we were discussing this, I was doing research too. There's a lot of legal issues out there where when you're doing things such as, let's say, charter revision or whatever, the use of shall versus may is extremely ambiguous at this point. So if we're going to clean stuff up, let's clean it up and put it will be or shall be, and we understand that shall means a directive. But that's what I remember most of the contention was, number one.
Right.
And that meaning that every year something's going to be put in there. It's not, maybe yes, maybe no, blah, blah, blah. It's got to be a directive. And then second of all, yeah, I mean, I don't get this, a tax of 2 mills against the property subject in such municipality. To me, I mean, I'm glad, I think we put a dollar amount in it, this budget, but just casually or whatever, or reading this, the imposition of tax of 2 mills against the property subject to tax in such municipality. Now, does that mean all property that's subject to mills, to tax? Does that mean residential property and business property, or which I don't really think it is necessarily appropriate? Or when it says mills against the property, it's almost assuming that, well, you have a property in mind, but that's not what our intent is. Our intent is to, I mean, we might have a property in mind eventually, but the intent is to build up a fund so that we can go after grants or whatever, or have some monies available if a property comes into being. So I think we really, I think, should get rid of that particular using the mill, and maybe put up to, you know, an amount shall be up to a certain dollar amount, unless we can come up with a way to specify what property are we talking about when it says 2 mills.
So I did address that with the assessor directly. And that is why in the language here, you'll see, if we were to look at it, your maximum amount last year, going into our July 1st of this year, would have been $5,453,554 based upon our current mill. Now, understanding, if you put that amount in, your mill rate is going to go up. But it's based upon the tax that's applied against all property that the municipality taxes, not the property that you're thinking about purchasing. That's not what it's relative to.
Okay. Well,
So
it does.
at your townwide grand list total, your tax rate is determined, you get your mill rate amount, and then up to 2 mills, you have the opportunity to put in based upon statute. And that's how we created the original language of the ordinance.
Okay, so, but it does say an amount not to exceed, which really leaves a lot of room for variance, because we can be anything below that. But my point is, from $1 to up to 2 mills, as long as something every year is statutorily put in there.
And that is correct, because you got to remember, not every town has the same mill rate or the same dollar amount that applies to that mill rate. So they made sure that the language was vague enough to allow a town to put in, you know, it could be a small town like, say, Chaplin. Their grand list is what, 7 billion or whatever. So their overall mill rate may be higher, but their taxing rate is different, which their mill could only be 700,000. So they could put up to 1.4 million in, where you have a much higher grand list.
Right.
So in this aspect, you could put 5.4 million in, but it doesn't require it.
Right. And I'm absolutely number one in favor of open space and purchasing, but, up to 2 mills is just ridiculous for our town. So I just want to make sure that we're aware of this and we continue to fund it at some level.
Yeah, Gail, if I remember correctly, in our discussions, the bigger concern wasn't that maximum amount, but it was making sure that there's a minimum amount put in there so that we are in tune to this, and we are making sure that when land becomes available, we have the availability of some funds to either pay for it or offset the cost to it, but that this is a mechanism for us to save for those occasions that we have the opportunity to increase our acquisition of open space, basically.
And that's a fund that does not expire. So as you build into it, you have that. So it could be a parcel you're thinking about, and 3 years down the line, it comes available. You have those funds available, but it's just going forward and making sure you're putting those fundings into that account so they are available at that point.
So James, right now, it's written based on the statutory language, but within our ordinance, we could make a change to our ordinance following the proper procedure and add a minimum that we want to make sure is funded each year, whether it be $10 or $5,000 or whatever we as a council want to change that to be, we could make a minimum requirement for our budget purposes. Is that right?
Effectively, yes. The language of the 2 mills would still be there, but you could say on an annual basis under the budgeting process, no less than
Right.
$25,000 should be put in.
Okay.
That way you have your minimum, but you know you can put more in if you know something's coming down that you're interested in. You want to have those funds available in that non-expiring account. It'll be set.
Okay. Counselor Anist?
Thank you. You guys talked about a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about, but I think we need to put a minimum in there. So every year a minimum amount gets put into this land acquisition fund. I totally agree with that. Also, if we can change language, I know shall and may was the big stumbling point during the budget. That maybe we use a different word rather than shall or may. Shall is definitive. Yes, you have to put the money in there. May is may. But people look at it, the definition to certain people are different. So whoever you ask, you're going to get a different answer. So maybe using a different word so that we have to put X number of dollars in there every year would probably be better. But I agree. I think there should be a minimum that has to be put in.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Menke?
Yeah, I agree. There should be a minimum amount to put in, and that wouldn't preclude us from putting more in if we needed to, but there should be at least a minimum that would have to be in all the time. And if it's in the statute, then we can't then say, oh, we're going to take that out because we're going to cut that part of the budget to save a percentage of a mill or something. I think it's got to be a regular contribution to that fund. So we let that fund build up. So should some land become available or some opportunity become available, we have some funds there to use it. So I would suggest maybe make the minimum $10,000 or make a percentage of what our total budget is or something like that. But we should have some kind of a number there that's a definitive minimum contribution to that fund.
I think if you get into doing the percentages, you're going to get into the same confusion you have with the mill rate. So I would say, as a commission, say we want 10,000, say we want 15,000, and that's what we'll write into the language and do that amendment as part of. But if we get into vague numbers again, we're going to run into the same problem. We're not going to be funding it. We're not going to be putting any money into it, and the questions are still going to come out.
Yeah, the only thing is that 10,000 today may be not worth 10,000 10 years from now.
Correct.
But okay, yeah, whatever we have, we have to have some kind of a minimum, and I'm in favor of putting a minimum in there. Whatever we decided is the minimum.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Minor?
Yeah, in agreement with everybody, I won't repeat it, I think we should have a minimum number and set that definitively in there. The way it is with the shall and may is just subjective. The only thing I'd offer in addition to that would be, what about the possibility of putting in that the sale of any town-owned property shall be deposited into this account for acquisitions? I think that would help from the standpoint of being clear what the intent was, and also in the event of property sales, and whether that's real property as in real estate or equipment, whatever, that's all additional revenues that are above and beyond our mill rate. And I think it would be, most advantageously used in this fashion to be able to build up this account, to be able to utilize it for either grant matching or opportunity to purchase in the future.
Okay.
Thoughts on that?
Thank you, Counselor Minor. Counselor Nagel?
I would agree with what has been said several times just previous to me, that we do need a minimal amount that is put in there. Understand statute is hard to, or impossible to change on our local level, but through an ordinance or a resolution of some sort to make it ultimately clear what our intent is, should be included, not only for our sake, but also for the public, because this is one area of many where you combine mill rates and other things involving tax and whatever. The public is very confused, and I can understand why, as to where their monies are going and how they're going. And I think being clear about this shows that we have the best interests of the town of preserving land that should be preserved for the betterment of the community and natural resources and everything else connected with keeping our town a one to be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith, do you have anything to weigh in on in terms of what Councilor Minor mentioned? I know we did that this past year when we sold a piece of property for the I think it was 60,000 roundabout. We recommended that that be put in. Is that something that would make sense moving forward to have that in the language, or have that at the discretion of the council at the time, or what do you think?
I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be appropriate, if that is what you really intend. We've never had a commitment like this to be put into a fund like this, but I think that, we're moving forward in this town. I think it's probably a good approach that that you implement what was suggested by Chris and others tonight, and make a commitment to it. Sure. Because it's come back to bite you before that there wasn't enough money.
Right.
So you don't want to fall into that trap again. So you'll just, each year you can adjust accordingly. If you get a windfall in, then you can reduce down the commitment each year. And if you're drying up and not having any, new revenue, then you can increase it. So I think it'll work fine.
And we can check with Janet on that as well, just to confirm that she won't have any issues with the auditors with that money going directly in. So we'll have that as a verify with her.
Okay. Thank you. Any other thoughts on this one tonight? All right, we'll move it forward to our next. Oh, Sharon, did you have something?
Just when are we we need to put this in our annual calendar? No, for the town to do this every year?
It would be, yeah, it would be part of our budget each year. Once we update the ordinance, which we would have to do the public hearing and all of that, then it would be part of our budgetary process.
Okay, so it won't be for this year, it'll be for next.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. We'll move this to our next agenda. And we are moving on. The next item this evening is discussion on the panhandling ordinance language. So we had discussed this in the past, and I believe it's been brought forward. Councilor Annis, I think you brought it forward as a possible discussion item. If I'm wrong, correct me.
Yes, it was me, but at the request of Councilor Minor.
Okay. I know that what you had mentioned is there has been an uptick, certainly with I think with the warmer weather, especially,
Right.
and more people around town, and we wanted to open it up for discussion again. So I'll open it up.
Correct. They're just everywhere, and I think we're more concerned with them being on improper use of the state highway on the Berlin Turnpike. They're crossing the street where they shouldn't be crossing the streets. Cars are stopping. The light turns green, they're still stopped talking to the gentleman or the woman, handing them stuff, and it becomes a hazard. And Chris had asked if we could have this back on our agenda. I believe we did talk about this probably 3 years ago. And we thought maybe we could bring it back, and if there was any changes that we could make. So I would let Chris speak.
Okay. Councilor Meyer?
Yeah, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Carol. The concern I've got is there is without question an uptick, especially on the Berlin Turnpike. And the concerning part to me now is they seem to be going on to the center median of the highway, which is creating a hazard as cars are starting to turn left. I actually watched it happen the other day where a gentleman had gone out to the next lane over to retrieve something, and actually got stuck in between a moving line of cars and a stop lane. And I just think it's inevitably going to be, somebody is going to be hurt. The Berlin Turnpike is posted as no pedestrian traffic. I know the police department has not pursued it in the past, just with the amount of hotel traffic and, walking between locations up there. But this is increasingly becoming a problem now, mainly on the Pike, but there are definitely some of the side shopping centers are also experiencing it. I have had experience with talking to several property owners that are shopping center owners, and they do not allow soliciting on their properties and would not have any problem with signing off on paperwork to allow the police department to enforce it. But I think we really need to look at it as a whole to try to get a better handle on it, because over the weekend there was literally 9 different people at the same time from Robbins to the Berlin line, and it's inevitably something's going to happen.
Okay. I know we have in our packet several other town ordinances from other towns that address panhandling, and we had talked about doing this, but I don't believe we have any formal language at this point.
There's no formal language on this. The last time that we were discussing this, the town attorney at the time felt it may be in violation of First Amendment rights. So I pulled together several different towns' language, one of them being Vernon, as that was mentioned during leadership, just to see where the council wants to go with it.
Yeah,
and I think the big part would also be to try to do it in collaboration with the Department of Transportation, because that's primarily their road, that being number one, and also to, the specific property owners that we do have, contact with, to be able to get them to address it specifically. So you're going away from, as Attorney Ancona has opined in the past, that he feels it's a First Amendment compromise. My question would be that it is in direct violation of the law in terms of where they are, that there is no pedestrian traffic allowed. So that might be our way to, work it out, to try to have it done that way. And then private property is just that. They have the right to say no soliciting, and as long as there is enforcement action in place to be able to trespass them, they will, and they can handle it that way.
Keith, do you think it would make sense for you to check with the chief and his thoughts on that piece in terms of it being the no pedestrian traffic and the enforcement of that?
Sure. Let me talk with Steve, and we'll get back to you on that. Sure.
Okay. Chris, I know you're specifically mentioning the Berlin Turnpike, but it also happens on the on and off ramps in town to Route 9, which again, none of that is really town purview, but the chief has said in the past that if people are stepping into the road or becoming a nuisance, a public nuisance, or approaching vehicles, then that would be more of a concern. So it would be nice to hear from him again, perhaps, regarding those issues.
Yeah, and one other unintentional consequence that I witnessed the other day as well is somebody was nervous about pulling up right alongside somebody, so they stayed back from the light. But by doing that, they didn't trip the traffic signal. So there was a line of cars behind them that just physically couldn't make the turn because they just didn't feel comfortable pulling right upside, the person that was standing 3 feet to their left.
Okay. Let's see, Councilor Nagel.
Thank you. A few of the things I wanted to mention were just mentioned by Mr. Minor and a few others. There is a question in terms of the legality of where the state has jurisdiction, where the town has jurisdiction in various different areas, and also what our police department can do in terms of what the state is in terms of the ability to proactively do something or to handle things once they try to handle things once they're on supposedly town property as opposed to state property. So it isn't as easy as it seems. I would assume that we're all in agreement. Indeed, panhandling, that especially in general, but especially if it affects traffic, is not to be tolerated, but trying to to follow through with an effective way to handle all these different elements as to where they are is something of a frustration to everyone, and I'm sure even a frustration to our town attorney. And I'd like his input once again, given that times have changed and perhaps the attitude of the state and statutes. I'm not up on those necessarily as to this particular situation. And an additional thing in terms of panhandling being a problem, if someone should at the last minute or not decide to give a panhandler some money, and we all have our opinions as to whether that's an appropriate thing to do or not, that indeed it does hold up traffic again. And here's another situation where cars, especially on off ramps, are a possible collision or fear of going around simply because one person thinks they're doing a good deed for someone. It's really creating other safety problems as well as traffic problems, be it on the turnpike or be it on the off ramps or be it exiting or coming into some of our business plazas in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nagel. Councilor Menke.
Yeah, I agree. This is a problem. I have two witness people ready to go and then stopping at the last minute to give out a donation, which means the car's behind. And then have to slam on their brakes because they didn't expect it. We're asking the police then to enforce something we when their hands are tied to keep our cars safe in our driveways and our garages. And all the penalties here are $99 fines, $90 fines, $150 fines. If these people are panhandlers, they're not gonna be able to pay the fine. And then what happens? Do we keep them in jail till they pay the fine? Do we send them out to panhandle in some other town till they can raise the money to pay the fine? There's got to be some solution to it, but I think we need to get the police chief involved to see what his solution would be, because I have to think that even if we pull them in and fine them, they're not going to pay the fine, and we're going to see them on another street corner someplace else. Granted, they may move out of town and go to some other town, but someone else will fill that spot. So, I guess they panhandle there because they get contributions there, and so that's part of the problem too. The more people that
cynical, I know.
Oop, I lost you, Councilor Menke. Are you still there?
Stop and give them money, that's also a problem. Do they get fined too then if they? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Anist.
Thank you. I mean, I'm looking at these and they're all basically the same. Most of these towns have the same format, talk about the aggressive manner, aspect, solicit, false and misleading. So there's got to be something out there that we can do that's not in violation of the First Amendment. If these other towns are doing it, and I know there's more towns than what we just have that have this, then I really don't see why we can't put something together. I agree with the fines, but you know what? If they get ticketed a number of times, maybe they won't come back. And if they go to another town, then so be it. But just, we have to do something because, just like the juvenile, somebody's going to get hurt and then we're going to take notice. I think we need to be proactive rather than reactive and get something in place.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Anist. Councilor Minor.
Just one final comment, and specifically to Vernon, is I've got several properties out there that we represent that have had big issues with this in the past. They have left. They are not there. And my intent is concerning Newington. I don't care if they move to Weathersfield, Rocky Hill, or any other town, as long as they're not here impeding our businesses, impeding our traffic, creating safety issues to our residents and our visitors. That's all I care about. Where they go, it's not my concern.
Okay. Councilor Donahue.
Yeah, I mean, specifically the people that stand on the exit ramp for Route 9.
Mhm.
I mean, I was on a for some reason I kept coming down the ramp because I kept having to go to a store and forget something and come back. But I mean, the amount of stuff that these people collect, there's no way they're carrying it home. I mean, so these people are probably being dropped. I mean, it's a business, or so it seems. I mean, I feel bad for the occasional people. I mean, they've stood in that corner so long, they've worn a path, there. I mean, I don't know how I unfortunately don't have the time to sit there and, watch and see if they come and get picked up or whatever, but I have to agree with Chris. I almost got somebody the other day because they went and they stopped and, it would have been my fault for rear-ending somebody.
Yep. All right. Mr. Chapman, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that over the weekend, it's as bad as there was a young mother with a stroller panhandling on the median on the Burlington Turnpike. That's how bad this has gotten. So it's not only the one person now, they're bringing their kids with them. Very bad situations. So I've already written to Steve through email that we're going to discuss panhandling tomorrow. So we'll see what he has to say.
Okay. Perhaps if you see fit, he could attend our next meeting as well. Counselor Minor? Chris, you're muted? There you are.
Sorry, there are two different groups of individuals. You have people that legitimately are down in their luck. And those are the types of people that I would encourage, the police department to touch base and get them in touch with social services to try to find them a path of assistance. But to those that, John referenced and I've seen personally, they do get picked up by a Lincoln, or, they're getting picked up and moved from location to location. I've seen the same individual in multiple towns and they just move around as they see fit. If they're not getting the ability to do it here in town, which there's been one or two here and there in the past, has not been an issue. But now that they're just progressively being up and down the turnpike as being some type of a cash business, to me, it's just unsafe and it's not appropriate. If they need services, let's get them directed to services to try to help them legitimately. And if not, let's just move them along. Thank you.
Counselor Mankey?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not saying we should keep the panhandlers there. I think we should do what we can to get them services and help that they may need, because they are a safety concern, and frankly, it's not unsafe for them to be standing in the median of the turnpike. So we need to do something. I'm not sure what the method to do that is, and I'm not sure what the solution is, but I think that we should have the police chief sign in and see what he thinks about what he thinks he has the resources for and what he can do with his officers.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, for me, this isn't about the act of panhandling in my mind. It's more about the safety issue. So, there are people out there that are down on their luck and need help. And that's why they're perhaps doing this. They're asking for help. I understand that you're saying there may be other aspects to this that aren't those that are truly in need. And I know the chief had spoken to this before, that if they can help, we have had officers offer services and offer help and offer rides if needed. I mean, our officers go above and beyond to try and do the right thing when they're in these situations. So I have no doubt that we are trying to provide services. It's a matter of whether people want to take us up on that or not as well. So it's a much bigger issue than just not wanting this happening in our town, but really finding that common ground where we are helping the people that need help and making sure that we're keeping everyone else safe. And that is a bigger issue. To hear a stroller on the turnpike with someone who is panhandling that's just frightening to me, because I don't want to stand on the turnpike myself, never mind a baby in a stroller. So that's really concerning. And I look forward to hearing what the chief has to offer and his suggestions regarding this. I can certainly have Attorney Ancona join us I'm not sure, it may be too early for that. I think perhaps the council wants to have more discussion with the chief and amongst ourselves to determine where we want to go, and then bring the town attorney in once we've determined what our course of action may be. I'm looking around to see if you guys are in agreement with that, or if you would like Attorney Ancona.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from police chief first.
Okay.
I will say, as part of my review and compilation of these different ordinances from other towns, I did run across a few towns that have actually created a flyer that their police officers will have to allow them to be aware of services that are available for them within the town, especially if they happen to be panhandling in the town they reside in. So that may be something that we look at pulling in human services with as well, to be able to create that listing of services that we can get for them.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yep. All right, folks, I don't see any other hands up, so we will keep this on the agenda for next time. Next item for this evening is the consideration of canceling the August 24th regular meeting. As you all know, the council meets typically the second and fourth Tuesday of each month. It has historically been the case that if we are able to, we cancel the second meeting in August. Just, we all need a break here and there. And if there is not a lot of council business to have a full agenda, then we would consider postponing the business items to the following meeting if possible. So I'm going to open it up for discussion on this. I will say, I'm looking at the clock, it's 9:15. And so if our agendas are pretty full and we need this meeting, then we certainly can keep it, but I'll open it up. Mr. Chapman, I don't know how you feel about this, knowing what's on the docket for future meetings, if you feel like it's a good idea to consider this cancellation or not.
Well, the big things on the agenda that I see coming up in the next month or so is the high school roof issue. Because if we're going to get that done, it's probably going to require action by the council following whatever action the Board of Education takes. The other thing that, we're moving forward and we're just about ready to present the public safety radio system. So we're not sure on the timing, but we can work around this cancellation. That's not a big problem. So I would say, from my perspective, unless something changes, I would have no objection to you taking the night off.
And certainly, as we always say, we can always add a special meeting if there is any business that comes up that really does need to be handled in a timely fashion and cannot be put off to the following meeting. That certainly is always an option. Counselors, what are your thoughts?
I would like a day off.
Counselor Mankey, thank you, Counselor Donahue. Counselor Mankey.
This is on the agenda for action next meeting, so we could hold off to next meeting and see what the future agendas might look like. We might have a better idea in 2 weeks. But I guess I can go either way. I think we have been, a lot on our plate, and we could use a slight vacation.
I would suggest too, perhaps Counselor Mankey and Counselor Annis, when we do our next agenda setting, perhaps we look a couple of meetings out instead of just one, and just see what's coming down the road and see if it does make sense or not. And then we can report back as a group to the council at our next meeting as well.
We can do that.
Any other thoughts? If not, we'll just keep this on for, get some further information next time to determine if we want to move forward with it. All right, I don't see any hands. We'll continue onward. Next item this evening is discussion of in-person meeting requirements. Who is taking the lead on that, Mr. Chapman?
Well, our expert on staff is James in this particular area, so I talked to him today, and he's prepared to discuss it with you. It's certainly as clear as mud, and as I read to you earlier tonight, the COVID thing is coming back, so I'm not sure what you're going to want to do after James presents tonight, but James, it's all yours.
Thank you. So, as we all know, the past 15 months have been a lot of fun. We've spent a lot of time on our computer screens. So really, we need to look at how the council and staff feel moving forward. I understand most counselors may be apprehensive about meeting in person. We do have the ability of 3 different ways right now based upon legislation that was passed, which is Public Act 21-2, which really is an implementer bill. So it's, as you guys saw from your folder, a very large document, which is why I gave you the specific pages that this was broken out under, as well as the primer that outlined under FOI how they saw each of the pieces working. So we've attempted a couple of small gatherings through the council chambers. We did a award ceremony a few weeks back. We last night just presented a informational meeting for the public for Frontier Communications. We did run into a couple of small issues with the sound system, which we'll have Vision Point back with in order to make some adjustments. We were having a problem where the sound in the room wasn't coming through well enough. Unfortunately, last night they put it so well that it was feeding back through the microphones from the speakers above the head of the table. So, we work with it as much as we can. But there is the possibility, and I make this recommendation very lightly, that if you choose to meet in person, I just ask, because it makes all of our lives much easier, that you at least have in the room a full quorum of membership. So at least 5 members are present in the room. And the reason for that is it eliminates the requirement that the new law has that we have to provide technology and a location for the public to be able to attend the meeting. If you have a quorum and you're in an in-person format, that public has the same opportunity to attend that meeting. So that alleviates a lot of stress for staff itself, 1, in acquiring the technology we need, 2, determining a location for it. If you're fully virtual, that's where we really have to have that available. Now, the reason for the whole quorum is the language itself that they approved requires that if, say, you're 4 members in person and you're 3 members virtual, and let's just say we get a thunderstorm that rolls through, never happens, right? And it knocks out the internet in town. If we lose the membership that's virtual, we lose our quorum. So then, based upon the loss of that quorum, we have to wait a half hour, attempt to reconnect the people, praying that the internet's going to come back. But we can't start our meeting for the first half hour. We then also have to make the process of going through informing the public that right now we're in an adjourned format because we don't have a full quorum, posting that onto our website, informing them when we could possibly be back up. Then it also gives us a period of up to 2 hours if we're still without a quorum where we would have to adjourn that meeting. So that is the main reason that I say if we can have at least 5 members present in the room, that alleviates any issue that we're going to have with that. It also alleviates the technology issue. That's primarily regular meetings. Special meetings, executive sessions, those are different and they have a little bit of a unusual format to them. Councilor Minor, I see has a question.
Councilor
No, just a question / statement. So in the event we do have 5 members in the building, then there is no need for the responsibility to provide any type of equipment or access to remotely, correct?
That is correct, because the public has the same option to attend in that room as the membership that's there.
So to me, that in and of itself should be enough reason to do this, because when we adjourned in-person meetings, it was to protect the public and to protect ourselves. We're at the point now where anybody that has a desire to be vaccinated, has been vaccinated, or has the ability to be vaccinated just about anywhere, and to be able to provide in-person dialogue with the public, should they so choose, I think is a much more appropriate format to be able to go back and forth.
Thank you, Counselor Minor. Counselor Menke?
Yeah, I agree. I've been in my basement here going to these meetings for 17 months now, and I want to get out of my basement. I would much prefer to be doing this in person. I think it's better for the counselors. I think we can communicate better in person. I also think the public has a chance then to attend in person or not attend, either way, and they still will have the opportunity, I assume, to sign in or call in if they like they can now. So I would think in person would be the way to go.
And that's correct. At this point, we are still waiting, and John can address this a little bit as well. We're still waiting for NCTV's connection into the room for them to be able to broadcast directly from the cameras that are there. We're also waiting on the update to the camera to allow us to pick up the entire dais as well. So we'll still be in that virtual format. So we'll still be utilizing Zoom. We'll still be placing it out there onto our YouTube page so people can still watch it. And as we're doing tonight, NCTV is pulling the same stream that we're running right now and broadcasting that as well. So we will still perform those same processes.
Right.
We're not required to under the new law, but we already have those in place, and it doesn't make sense to change them right now.
And any counselor who doesn't want to participate in person for whatever reason, I mean, if COVID rears its ugly head again in the fall and we're back to where we were last fall, they can still do it remote. They can still Zoom in, I assume.
That is correct.
Like we do now. And if any of us are away from our homes, we can Zoom in at a meeting like we allowed. We made that change a number of years ago. You could call into the meeting. So we still have opportunities to get into the meetings. I just think a in-person meeting would be beneficial and would get me out of my basement.
I would just add to what Counselor Menke said, any council member and or staff member who wanted to participate remotely would be allowed to do that, I think.
Correct.
Okay. Counselor Anist?
Thank you. Thank you. I concur with what Chris and Tim said. We need to go live, and I'm hoping that this will take place on the 27th. Dialogue is so much easier. I think you can communicate with each other better. And it's just, we got to get back to normalcy. And I really don't think that these variants that are coming out and the people that aren't vaccinated, it's not going to affect us because those people aren't the people that are around us. We just need to get back to normalcy, and our public needs to be able to come and see us talk. If we have public hearings, especially on the TPZ side, they need to be able to go to a public hearing live and state and look at the maps themselves and not on a screen. This is just, I think it's time. We need to go live.
Thank you,
And
Counselor Ennis. Counselor
I know
Donahue?
they will have that on their agenda for discussion tomorrow as well. Renata has that placed as her town planner's report. So she's going to be discussing meeting requirements, and I assume she's going to involve me in it as well, as she usually does. So that'll be a discussion we will have. We still will have to do a bit of testing in the room because we still haven't addressed how we're going to swap back and forth. So if we do have the public in the room, moving the camera from our Zoom camera over to the public camera and the presentation. So we still have to look at a bit of pieces with that, but hopefully we would have that in place for our 27th meeting and be able to handle all of that easily.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Donahue?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to face the same issues that James is going to face, right? I mean, we have, you know, our system is, you know, I have a laptop in the control room that picks up Zoom and I send it through my broadcast system. If I now also have to pick up the signals from the council room and broadcast those, how do I switch back and forth, you know, and get the presentations? And, you know, I did watch the, was it the environmental committee that did the award ceremony?
Correct.
It was hokey at best. I mean, it
Yes.
worked, but it was the sound was horrible. I mean, I think Gail finally lost her mind and went and picked up one of the microphones.
I handed it to her.
Yeah. You know, the other thing, and I'm not sure if I saw this correctly, but there's not an individual microphone for each counselor.
No, they're actually a boundary style mic, so they're actually meant to handle 2 counselors at a time. We are actually looking at possibly changing those out to be individuals, more directive, so that you're directly in front of that mic and picking up your sound only. It was designed not with COVID in mind and not with possible barriers or shields in mind. So we're still looking at that piece of it. The microphones themselves, once the gain is up on them, we actually do get a really good signal through. But it's just making sure that we don't get that feedback through as well in the meeting, and we don't need that. So.
Well, yeah, and they were in.
Yeah, Vision Point was just in. Luckily, they were in testing our PA system, so we were able to have them take a quick look at that, and they did determine that there are some programming issues that they need to correct. So they'll probably be back tomorrow or in the next couple of days, and Paul will be speaking with them and getting that corrected for us.
Yeah, I know they were in here tonight, but they didn't seem overly impressed with the results they were getting.
No, and even when I was in there for a short moment and they were going through the pad, they noticed some severe problems. So hopefully we'll get those all corrected and we'll be able to have our meetings and everything will go smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want this to become a political football. I mean, we did waive a bid because these guys were supposed to be the best of the best. And, it's been a year and we're, from my perspective at NCTV, let me take off my council hat. I don't even get responses from these guys. I have to go through Paul. Okay. I go through Paul and then it's like, okay, we're working on it. We're back ordered. Dude, I spent almost $100,000 getting my studio ready. Help me out here. Throw me a bone, do something.
And we are seeing that on the town side, even with materials. That is one of the reasons that we held off on computer replacements as well, was the chip shortage and COVID. And now we're seeing it even worse with vehicles and technology that we need to complete that room. And had we had that specific technology in there before we put the walls up, things would have been much easier. But we had to create the package after the fact. So now we've got to make it work. And that's where the problems lie. As you see it with your side as well.
I'm in here with my little air conditioner in my little office, freezing my butt off.
All right, it looks like we have a couple more hands up. Counselor Nagel?
Originally, when this discussion came up during the pandemic and whatever about coming back, whatever, my concern had always been my personal health and other people's health concern, considering the situation. Things, and I agree with others, things have changed since then. And I feel comfortable at the moment meeting in person if indeed it possibly can happen. But I do hope everyone is going to follow the directions of whatever the health district does if indeed things radically change. And I do like the option is there just in case for any of us if the need arises or we feel uncomfortable being there in person. And I was going to chime in advance, but Councilor Donahue was so ably pointed out the difficulties with NCTV in presenting things to the public for those who do not wish to attend meetings in person. And it's a lot more complicated than the public might see, as just witnessed by the conversation we had tonight. So the only other leeriness is if we cannot do a somewhat decent presentation to the public when indeed we do meet, if it's 2 weeks or whenever. With those two caveats, I have no problem with moving forward, as I know some other counselors and more forums seem to want to do, to get back to whatever we happen to call normal in the future. Thank you.
Tell you, we will be working. I'll be working together closely with the IT department and a couple of guinea pigs in order to make sure that that presentation does come off as well as it does with us on Zoom now.
Great. Counselor Minor?
Thank you. Just reiterate basically what John said, and I've got a bit of frustration with this because this building has now been occupied for a year. So if there were issues with the system, I would have expected them to be addressed and solved by this point. I understand there's issues that still are around, but at this point we need to get back in person, work through the issues that we have, get them resolved and get back to business. This has just gone on far too long, and it's time to get back in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Minor. Anyone else? Yeah, I agree. I think it's time for us to get back in person if we're comfortable with it. And like I mentioned earlier, I think we need to make sure we have options so that, and we've always had the phone in option. So if we're in person and we can have a phone available for people to phone in, if we, can do Zoom, we can do Zoom, whatever method we can use, we need to have remote access for staff and counselors who may or may not want to attend, as well as the public. So as long as we can provide those opportunities and be able to accomplish those, I am fine with us going back in person. But I agree in terms of looking forward. If we see an uptick, if we see, we were, I'm sorry, but I remember when we first got the word that we were in the gray, how excited we all were. And, we need to stay in the gray. So, and Mr. Chapman is our emergency director. So if things change, if status changes, if numbers go up and we need to reconsider and go back into a remote format, then I would look to Mr. Chapman as our emergency director to lead us in that direction in conjunction with CCHD. And we can certainly make those changes. This isn't a set in stone. This is we're going to try it and hopefully we'll be able to accommodate all parties involved in a way that works. And then as time goes on, if we need to make a change, we make a change. But right now, I would like to see us get back in person, those of us that are comfortable with it, and start doing that again. And as long as we're able to handle the needs, then let's do it.
The legislation in the Public Act allows us 3 different formats. So if we do need to revert back to another one, we are good through that with us until April 30th, 2022. That's when a report is due to the government agency to determine virtual meeting formats going forward from that point. So we'll see where that comes through. I know we'll probably have a seat at the table from the Town Clerks Association. Hopefully we'll get some information through from our attorney as well. They plan to have a few of their organization on it as well. And hopefully they'll do some good reaching out to towns who've had to do this for the past 17 months and actually make a plan that functions for everybody.
The other thing I would say to everyone involved is to remember, in the past, I know I've come to meetings where I haven't felt that great because we're in person and people are going to see if I'm not sitting in my chair, and you worry about that public perception of things. So I'm going to absolve all of us to do what's right. And if we are back in person and we don't feel well, then we don't come to a meeting. And if we can attend in other ways, fine. But I will stay home if I don't feel well, and I would hope that all of you would as well, because we want to make sure we're doing the right things here. So just like in every other setting. So, all right, enough said. So hopefully we'll be on board for the 27th. James, just keep us updated if anything gets in the way of that.
I will let you guys know, and we'll know it as part of leadership as well.
Okay.
So I'll make sure I brief everybody when we set agenda for the 27th anyway. So if there are any issues, but I don't foresee them. If we're going to have a majority of members there, or if we're going to see 3 or 4 on virtual, I'll just need to know that, because that'll determine how we set the table up. But other than that, we should be good.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, folks, we'll move on. That concludes our new business. We're moving on now to resignations and appointments, and we did add one this evening, Councilor Anist.
James, can you put it up? Thank you. Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby makes the following appointment. Central Connecticut Health District Board of Directors, David Wemmett, 42 Vivian Street, Newington, Connecticut, 06111, Party D, term 7/13/2021 to 6/30/2024, replaces himself as a reappointment.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Mankey, and discussion on this. All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is the refunds, approval of the July 13th, 2021 refunds for an overpayment of taxes. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Resolved that property tax refunds in the amount of $937.61 are hereby approved in the individual amounts and for those named in the requests for refund of an overpayment of taxes certified by the revenue collector, a list of which is attached to this resolution.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a second? Seconded by Counselor Menke.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We move on now to minutes of previous meetings. I would entertain a motion to accept the June 22nd, 2021 public hearing minutes, Neighborhood Assistance Act, June 22nd, 2021 public hearing minutes, Town Technology Fund, and June 22nd, 2021 regular meeting minutes as written.
So moved.
Second,
Moved by Counselor Menke, seconded by Counselor Braverman. Any discussion on these? Counselor Anist?
Hi, I'm not going to be voting on these minutes as I was not in attendance at the meeting.
Okay, so you're abstaining?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Counselor Nagel?
Just to let you know, I did read them over today and they appear to be fine. So I'll be voting in favor of them.
Great, thank you, Counselor Nagel. All right, I don't see any other, so all those in, well, you know what, we're gonna do a roll call because it's not gonna be unanimous. We have an abstention, so we'll do a roll call on this, please.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
Mm-hmm.
Counselor Anist,
Same.
Counselor Braverman,
yes.
Counselor Budraco,
Yes.
Counselor Camillo,
Yes.
Counselor Donahue,
Yes.
Counselor Menke,
Yes.
Counselor Minor,
Yes.
Counselor Nagel,
Yes.
Mayor Del Buono.
Yes,
8 yes, 1 abstention.
thank you. Next on our agenda is written and oral communications from the town manager. Mr. Chapman?
Just a couple of things. One I want to mention is that we've been getting a lot of calls last couple of days about the water situation with flooding in town. I just want to point out that for the month of July, we averaged about 4 inches per year in July alone. We are already at over 10 inches for just July. So we're getting a lot of rain, a lot of water, and it's got to go somewhere. So if you get any calls, I certainly want to know where it is, and that'll talk to the property owners and see what's going on. But it's supposed to have, we were supposed to have another couple inches, but that was canceled, thank goodness. So other things are, we're now on our second or third catalytic converter replacement over at the senior center. All the buses that park along Cedar Street have had their catalytic converter stolen, and we just had it again over the weekend. So you really want to try to put your vehicles inside if you can, or have good lighting outside. We're going to move the buses to another location that should work out better, but it must be a lot of money in these catalytic converters. So, and the other third thing is there's been a request to have a sign of some type installed coming down Cedar Street down the mountain that basically would say, "Welcome to Newington, the home of Bill Rogers." Was a popular, famous runner that graduated Newington High School. So I'm going to be looking into that. If you have any suggestions or concerns, please let me know. But Bill Rogers going to be recognized at the library as well in the future because they do sponsor the 5K race every year for Bill Rogers. So, and he's going to be coming into town. So we want to try to welcome him with having a sign up on Cedar Street, East Cedar Street. So just to let you know, but if you have any issues or suggestions, please let me know.
Should that go to our naming committee or no, because we're really doing a welcome sign?
I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
Typically, if we're naming a road or naming a facility, we would send it to our naming committee, but that's not really the case here. It's a welcome sign that you're considering. So I'm guessing it doesn't need to go to naming committee. I'm looking for thoughts on that.
I don't have any thoughts on it. Whoever's been on that committee.
Yeah, I think Counselor Menke, are you the chair of that?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't think it has to go to the committee because it's just a sign saying, you know, home of. It's not like we're dedicating a street or a building or a room permanently. We're just putting up a sign saying that this happened to be the home of Bill Rogers. So I don't think it needs to go to the naming committee. I think we can put up, you know, with the town manager approval, we can put up a sign saying welcome for that reason.
Okay. Counselor Donahue?
I had two things, but on the naming sign, I mean, could we just add on to the welcome to Newington signs as home of Bill Rogers?
With the existing big sign, I can take a look at that. Yeah, that may be a possibility. Let me take a look at it and then I'll figure out whether there is room for that.
Yeah, because I mean, that would give it in multiple places if we could do it. That would be nice.
Okay, that's I'll look into that. Yes.
Second question was, Keith, how's the job shadowing thing going?
The mentored program?
Yeah.
Well, we had out of the 6, I think we've had 2 that have dropped out, unfortunately. But the other ones, one in the police department, one in finance, one in our office, and then I forget where the 4th one is.
Engineering.
Over in engineering. It seems to be working well. The one in our office is fantastic. So I'm very pleased with that. And I just talked to her this afternoon, and she's been on the job now for just over a week, and she loves it. So that's a good sign.
I had the pleasure of meeting her this afternoon when I stopped in, and she was just lovely. And I was here for a couple of hours, and she was working the entire time that I was here, working hard. And, you know, I saw her with one of your staff members in the office, Jen. You know, it was really just lovely to see. She was doing a great job. So looks like a great program.
Good. And she's involved in all aspects of the operation. So she's just not working filing or anything. She's been at high level meetings, and she's very smart in the way she conducts herself and knows when to talk and when not to talk. So,
bonus.
Well,
that's great.
Thanks for asking.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Keith. This is something you may know or not know how to do. I've gotten a few requests in regards to the size of the print online involving the extravaganza, which I'm certain others will talk about at great length. And we all know it's a wonderful series of events coming up this week. Some people are having problems with the size of the print and want to know how a larger ADA print version can be acquired for those that are visually impaired and those who aren't. And seeing the size of it once it's downloaded, I can understand why those that aren't might need to be able to get it in a larger version. Do you have any help with that for those that have that problem?
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer right now, David.
Could you at least forward one to me and to the council, just in case inquiries go to others?
Yeah, let me take care of that tomorrow. Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Keith, did you have anything else on your report?
No, that's it. Just that the rain is becoming a problem. Hopefully we get a couple of weeks with no rain, but I don't know, the way the climate's going these days, things are changing rapidly. We're fortunate we're not out west right now.
True. All right. We'll continue on. The next item is council liaison and committee reports. Councilor Nagel.
Okay, we have not met, but we're going to meet, and this is the Town Manager Evaluation Committee. The due date is passed for councilors to get in their evaluation forms. If you have not handed yours in and you've told me there's a good reason why you haven't had, or if you just have not handed one in and either desire to or desire not to, I'd appreciate it if you would contact me or a member of the committee so that we can be as inclusive as possible and the committee can go forth with its work. So that would be appreciated if you could do it tomorrow or so, just to let us know where you are. And so we can move forward with coordinating things and moving on with the process. Thanks.
David, did you, I put mine in your mailbox. You get it?
Yes, I did. I did receive it, Keith.
Okay, thank you.
David, are you planning on doing that as an in-person or are you looking to do it virtually?
I have yet to talk to my two other committee members, but I would assume we could do it in person, but I've yet to talk to them as to how they wish to do it. It's
Okay.
going to take several days to compile things together before we can think of meeting together in whatever version.
Okay, just let me know when you need the agenda posted.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be contacting them in one form or another and see what they wish to do.
All right. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Yes, just a quick thing on the TPC tomorrow night. The public hearing will be about the proposed subdivision on Connecticut Avenue. I know that several residents were interested in that. So the public hearing tomorrow at 7 o'clock, Zoom. And also last night, actually, I think James alluded to it. There was a presentation organized by Gary Furstenberg with representatives from Frontier. They had like a whole team here because there have been an awful lot of inquiries or concerns from residents around town. There's been a lot of work. So the Frontier team gave a very good presentation explaining that what they're doing is placing fiber optics 100% throughout the town so that the entire town will be able to have a fiber optic system, should a resident or business want to. And a majority of their work has been on poles, but there has been some underground work required for where there needs to be some substations. And these are all in the public right of way, but of course, they have a right to work in the public right of way as long as it's for the public good. And again, this is 100% townwide covering for fiber optics for Frontier. The information, they said that they're about 75, I think, I don't know, 75% done with the work that they have to do. And they anticipate completing the rest of the actual, hard wiring work or digging, whatever, by the middle of August. And the information, like I said, was very good. So if anybody does want to view it, James, I know it was recorded.
It is actually on our YouTube page as well, so they can access it right off the virtual meeting page.
And the information, in addition to the presentation and what's actually being done, does include contact information where you can call for your questions and concerns. That's it.
In addition to that, I would just add, the company actually asked to get a copy of the recording. They wanted to use it for training internally. So they have that as well. So it was a good time. A lot of information came out.
Great. Councilor Menke.
I just want to report that last Thursday I attended a fire commissioners meeting, and the highlight of the meeting was swearing in of the officers of the fire company. I was impressed with the breadth of experience between all the captains and lieutenants and second lieutenants. And it was good to see that our volunteer fire department is up and running and really strong. I was also impressed with the number of cadets that were there in uniform. I think that bodes well for our future as a volunteer fire department, that there's that many young people that are in the cadet program to serve our town and to our future needs. So I was impressed with the entire meeting, and I would congratulate all those who were sworn in that night.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say I attended that as well at the fire department. It was a lovely ceremony, and it was great to see all of the officers. And it always amazes me how active our department is. For a volunteer department, when you look at other towns, we really are above all in terms of not just the sheer number of people we have interested in our department, but what they do each and every day. And like you mentioned, Councilor Menke, the cadet program is just exploding. They have, I think they said, close to 30 cadets, and That's unheard of. I think other towns look at us, and I've heard this from a few of the officers. The other towns look at us and say, my gosh, how are you doing that? How are you recruiting? What's going on? But to sit there that evening and watch, it's literally generation after generation after generation. It runs strong. These roots run strong. You see the same names from years ago that are now officers, that are now, just regular rank and file, and that are cadets. I mean, you really see these family lines running through the department. It's pretty amazing to recognize. So they do a great job for us, and they certainly do it as volunteers. So I like to always point that out, but it was a great ceremony to attend. All right, I don't see anybody else with their hands up, so we'll continue on. The next item this evening is public participation. So let me click on over to that window, and I see Rose Lyons is with us.
Hi, Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. First, a couple of things that are pretty quick and easy. I agree with Councilor Bedrejko about the litter around town, but I also am noticing more and more furniture and other things being put to the curbs. I especially noticed at the corner of Main and Robbins, the residents are putting furniture and various different items right at that stoplight there. And I believe it's a right-of-way, and it's probably the town or the state right-of-way. I'm just wondering if the best thing to do is probably call the town planner's office and make a complaint about the about the curbside stuff being put there. But it just seems like recently it's getting worse and worse. And secondly, as much as I am enjoying sitting home and watching on Zoom and doing my wash and having a snack or doing my dishes while the meeting is going on, I think it is time to get back in person as quickly as possible. And I agree with Councilor Annis, it's especially as important with TPZ as there's public hearings being held and it's difficult for some to get on and be heard. One comment about the sign, "Welcome to Newington," and adding home of Bill Rogers, that may be the state of Connecticut sign or property that it's on. They might have to be contacted about that. And Madam Mayor, if you could maybe let the Talk to the Mayor show borrow the time clock and allow you some time rather than waiting to the end for you to try and get in your little bits of information that you want to put out there, it might be a great idea. And when I went in to pay my taxes last week, going into the parking lot, it was the second time I was there, and an observation, it used to be you used to go in one way and come out the other. It now seems that there's no directional signs or anything, people are coming in as you're going out and vice versa. But anyway, just a little comment. And as to the town hall, Mady and I went there to pay our taxes as we usually do, and it was nice to see some familiar faces in the offices and some new faces as well. And we were especially interested to see the final outcome of the town hall project that we had spent many nights over the past 8 or 10 years sitting in meetings, listening to various schemes being discussed and various thoughts from building committees, mayors, town managers as to what their vision was for the building. While I was there, had a conversation with the town manager who asked me why I attend these meetings in person rather than just trust the elected officials to do what's best for the residents in town. I failed to mention, I gave him some reasons why, but I failed to mention that the biggest reason I went was because former Mayor Mortensen made a comment that he gave the citizens of Newington an F for their participation in the budget meetings. So that's how I started going, and this is why I continue to go, especially after listening to tonight's discussions on the CIP and the Permanent Municipal Building Committee. It only reinforced my reasons for going to meetings and attending in person so that I can see exactly what's going on. Looking at your faces, looking at the communications between the people at the table. After 12 years of learning how the system works, if any of you think suspending the CIP committee or establishing a permanent municipal building committee will take the politics out of the decisions made, I think in my opinion, you're being delusional. My belief is that many decisions are made behind the scenes and not by the elected or appointed officials, but by those that are in power in the political scene in the town of Newington. That being said, I hope you all stay well, stay safe, and maybe next time we'll all be together. And hopefully the visibility for the public will be better than it was in L101 in the new council chambers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. All right, and there's no one else in our public participation window, so I think we're all set with that. We'll move on now to remarks by counselors. Let's see, Counselor Menke.
Yeah, I know Newington's blessed with a lot of great employees, and I've met a lot of them over the course of my life living here in town. But Saturday I went to the landfill, or the new transfer station. It's not a landfill anymore; it's a transfer station. And I just have to say that John at the gate there is one of the most friendliest town employees I have ever met. He always has a smile. He always is helpful. And I just want to take a minute just to recognize him, because he's there on the weekends, and I think he's sometimes the only face of the town employees that maybe many people see, and he's a wonderful employee. So I just want to pass that around that he made my day Saturday just by going to the transfer station, drop off some cardboard.
I second that, Tim. He really is a pleasure to work with.
John is the man.
Counselor Nagel.
I agree concerning John. He's brightened my day every time I've gone there. A genuine asset to the town. I wanted to mention something that occurred in the Current today, an article. Recently, we celebrated the Health District's 25th anniversary at a council meeting, and today in the Hartford Current there was a very nice article concerning our health district and its 25th anniversary, and wanted to have the public and you aware that we're duly noted, because Newington is a very big part of the health district in this area. That's it.
Great, thank you. All right, I don't see any other hands up. So we will move on to adjournment. Counselor Annis, are you adjourning, or did you have another comment?
No, I was just going to remind everybody about the extravaganza this week, starting tomorrow evening. There's events every night. Friday night is the beer craft tasting, and it tops off on Saturday evening with a huge fireworks show. So I encourage everybody to come down and see the crafters and the food trucks and everything going on. Parks and Rec has been working very hard on getting this together. They had a low year last year because of COVID, so this year is going to be bigger and better. And come visit me in the beer garden. I'll be serving beer every night.
All right.
Pray for no rain.
Yeah.
Pray for no rain. Hang those rosary beads out.
All right. I don't see any other hands. We'll go to a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Menke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Donahue. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We stand adjourned at 9:58 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.